Oh, just got it on. Shh. The Masked Sovereign. Look like we're on a slant. Apologies about that. Let's get into the screen. Let's get muted. I'm just going to share it. Happy Saturday. What? Where are we? Bosh. Let me get in, let me get sharing, and we shall begin. Thank you for joining. Happy Saturday. It's going to be a special one. A special one for you. If you're in the room, let me know. For a moment. Well, it's hard to breathe in this. Not the easiest. Hello everyone. We're live. Extra special topic for you today. Gosh. One more share and we shall begin. Get comfortable. Get a pen. Get a drink. It's going to be a long one. It's going to be a big one. I'm going to sing in a minute. If you're on the replay, you will maybe want to fast forward. If you are live, you're going to have to suffer. You're going to have to allow it, to endure it. All right. I'm just going into the realm to let them know what go on, and we shall begin. I have 65 pages to read you. 65 pages. Brand new. It's taken 36 hours to complete. Okay, so get comfy. Thank you for joining. Muzzle mutts, a shout going out. Check out the community pages of Indigo and you will see the recent stories I've found of concern at the moment as well. The last share, here we go. Done. Enough of that. It's quite a nice little right there. He says, famously, you can just there you go. Let my eyes adjust. So I've got a document to bring to you to give you on this Saturday. It's quite a big one. It's quite a mouthful. It's quite a document next to everything else we've done. I'm happy to bring you this. It will be given to Greg to be populated with artwork, indexed and referenced there. Some of you may recognise the areas and the influences of this document. So we're about to go into stage 2, level 2, the bronze key competence level of the Sovereign Masters Guild is complete. We're going into the secondary tier, the middle tier, which is the silver. That's the merit, and I've got a document to introduce you to that and to finish off and encapsulate what we've just done and then where we're going to go. So it's the honour and privilege of mine to bring you this. I was going to come in yesterday, but it was too late, and I wasn't able to cognitively, effectively do this. So I'll just let the domains know we're live. I have the document ready. I've got to apologise in advance to the 13 that we have now. Why? Because I'm going to try and rendition artists. Example is the artist, and the track is Stay Awake. This is an introduction, all right? So let's just get on with it. If you're on the replay, you can fast forward about 3 minutes. If you're live, get your earplugs and bear with me. But I'll try my best for you, as always. So you got your build up. If we don't, If we don't kill ourselves, we'll be the leaders of a messed up generation. If we don't kid ourselves, will they believe us if we tell them the reasons why? Did we take it too far? Take it too far? Did we chase the Romans into Wonderland? Well, 100 grand, will they understand? It was all to stay awake for the longest. Then he's got your interlude, that's your first bit, sorry about that. Continuing on, I like this bit. March on, always after us. Lost troops, half the class of us. You man ain't seen the last of us. Stick around, yeah, like you last to pass. Not half-mast, raise our flag, kick the sand to let you know that we're coming and we're nasty, man. Don't need sleeping beauty, no, it's what you did to me. Come midnight and daybreak, yes, please gotta find me a namesake. We got faith but don't need Bibles. Take the mic or hear my recital. Well, I hold the title quite vital. We get high on the opposite of night, oh. It was all to stay awake for the longest time. It was long, it was wrong, but it felt so right. It's going on, yes, you got the interlude. See you at the finish line, see you at the finish line. If you got the heart to join us, join us. You got your interlude, and then we got another chorus there. If we don't kill ourselves, we'll be the leaders of a messed up generation. If we don't kid ourselves, will they believe us if we tell them the reasons why? Did we take it too far? Take it too far. Did we chase the Romans into Wonderland? Lose 100 grand, will they understand? It was all to stay awake for the longest. Staying awake, being alive, consciousness. Shout going out to all of them. March on, always after us. Lost troops, half the class of us. You man ain't seen the last of us. Stick around, yeah, like your elastoplast. Not half-mast, raise our flag, kick the sand to let you know that we're coming and we're nasty, man. We're not so nasty, we're conscionable. Don't need sleeping beauty, no, it's what the crown did to me. Come midnight and daybreak, yes please, you gotta find you a namesake, certificate of live birth. We got faith but don't need Bibles. Take the Michael, hear my recital. Well, I hold the title quite vital. We get high on the opposite of night-all. Now this bit is very interesting and it's applicable to all on, still got 17. It's applicable to all on the cognizance of. Last bit, the pain is nearly over. We just grow. If it's late, then we'll show. Read and wait. We just grow. If you hate, we don't show. We don't wait. We just grow. If it's late, then we'll show. Read and wait. We just grow. Yeah, and that's it. I'm going to finish it there. There is a couple more, but you get the point. If you didn't know, example. Yeah, and stay awake. You do now. Sorry, example, for killing the melody of that. But did we take it too far? Take it too far? Did we chase the Romans into Wonderland? Lose 100 grand? Yeah, it's a few more millions than that when we're talking bonded surety, as we'll get into underway. So the title for this document and presentation and crazy random video by Pirate Dave. I am the captain of this ship for the time being. Welcome to the SS Indiglo, the special purpose vehicle. The title would be The Heartless Strawman that is caught on the Jones Plantation receives capital punishment. So that's open to editing and streamlining. Alright, so I'm going to go into it, and you got 61 pages, 13,693 words. So we're going to go Latin, and we're going to go C-O-R, as in core. Latin meaning the heart. It can be used as an interjection with an earlier origin pointing to the word G-O-R, gore, and it's altered from God. This prefix core is an essential symbolic root of indication towards the human condition. The Galician and the Portuguese core and Old Portuguese C-O-O-R mean colour blue. To be human is to be coloured through the forces of the heart. These are said to be rooted from the Latin colour adding to the context of the example, colour is linked in with Old Latin colos, C-O-L-O-S, meaning covering, from the Proto-Indo-European kel, to cover and to conceal. This is further akin to the Old English Helan, H-E-L-A-N, which is translated in Dutch is Helen, ergo in Homer's The Iliad, it is Helen, or the light, that is indeed being hidden from I and I. So for those who deny any possible links, it should be known that C-O-R, core, is also a synonym for Homer, which was also a Hebrew measurement of capacity. For those looking for the said light connections, they will find it through the Middle English bli, meaning colour, and the Proto-Germanic bliwa, and Indo-European relations, which also meant light. Is this why we bleed? To die is to die on the rood screen. Rood is a root of red, which is blood, which is consumed and exhumed indeed by the pumping heart. Remember the blue mandala, remember the significance of red and blue, magneto-electro. There's a lot to expand on here, all right, further within. So this is a glossary and an introduction, a 13,000 word, 61 page introduction. The Roman core is translated as choir, with an alternate synonym in Roman of capella. To sing a cappella is to sing from one's own heart, and if you remember capella, you got to let the music, 1990s little rave track there. Choir is from the Latin chorus and Old French cure, Q-U-E-R, which is also a German adjective meaning cross, to die, colour, on the cross. This Old French word is consequently found upon the Latin quare, Q-U-A-R-E, which is esoterically asking the most important question, why? To form a query, should one also ignore the word square, S-Q-U-A-R-E, but S-Q-U-A-R-E? When looking at this, without a doubt, the prefix of quar, Q-U-A-R, as in, beginning of quarantine, quar, has brought about the term quarantine, which is also conceal something. Thinking on today's times, what is a forest now? Okay, something circling back around to the aspect of indeed coloration, to be put into quarantine, C-O-R-A-N-T-I-N-E, or Q-U-A-R-A-N-T-I-N-E. This is also seen in relation to a most arcane term that is hidden again in plain sight, that of liquor, L-I-Q-U-O-R, or L-I-C-O-R, where the spirits are veiled, no? The most important question of why is being asked by the Old Latin adverb quor, Q-U-O-R, and cure, Q-U-R-R, with relation to cure and core. You've really got to see this document. I'm not going to do this all the way through, but you've got the idea. So when you hear me repeat certain words, it may be that they sound the same, but they're spelled different, and you'll get the meaning. So hidden within the core and us, this is now C-H-O-R-U-S, is the son of Isis and Osiris, C in brackets, Horus, which is the Egyptian, Josh X, Bosch, it's incredible, which is the Egyptian solar deity, Horus, the sun, Aten, Apep, Akhenaten. We've covered this briefly in previouses, most of you were up to this. Osiris is the god of the underworld, and the anagram of Kor is O-R-C, Orc, whereby Orcus is also known as the god of the underworld. In relation to the chorus, Kor and us, and music, we find in this orchestra, which holds concerts, whereby the Czech cert, concert, means devil, who is also the god of the underworld. The orchestra that plays the concert, Hestra, in one Hestra, is representative of Hestia, the goddess of the H-earth. The orc is therefore symbolic of the lower made principle and the underworld, while the goddess Hestra Vestra, hidden within the chorus, is the son of Isis and Osiris. The goddess Hestra indicates the higher female aspect, and the earth, bass and treble. It's all about the bass and the treble, eh? They're put together to form the orchestra. Alright, I jumped a bit there, sorry. The mythology of Isis and Osiris points out the desire of Isis to put her king back together, and she thus impregnated herself from Osiris's bodily pieces. The Immaculate Conception. The multitudes and subsequently gave birth to Horus time. The phonetic of orchestra indicates the sexual symbolism of this exactly. Orchist, straw. Orchis is one of the two male reproductive glands, producing sperm and secreting androgens, while straw is a verb meaning to spread by scattering. Hence the orchestra is spreading scattered seed. The orcus or orchis, seed of that of Osiris, and that is being spread upon the face of the earth. So when I've said there's an Egyptian connection somewhere, hello, ears up. Face of the earth. Earth is an anagram of heart. Chorus is also Latin term meaning a plant and its seed. I've got Coors Light picture here, the kosher corner pictures, Alicor, apps, intelligent health. Then I've got some finer print to read you here. Having given birth to Horus is to have given birth to time, which is the beginning of light or coloration, colours of laws. Laws for humans. Black's law is a colour of law, no? Welcome to white, divine, universal and positive fixed laws. Hermetic, alchemic. All beginnings are paradoxical endings and are therefore traps unto themselves. They're inescapable conundrums where every solution is the creation of another problem, which is the exact basis as to why no question is separated from its answer. As long as there is time, there will be the necessity of the circle and the repetition of cyclical loops. Time itself is the construct of life and death in an endless self-centered loop. So where within time can consciousness or matter go? The answer is within the question. Nowhere. There is nowhere to go. This tends to create such despair in some of those hearing this because there has been this incessant belief that there was somewhere to go, something to attain and to acquire, a goal to achieve, or a victory over another. These are false constructs within a system designed to divert the attention of the mind onto the false hope that anyone can actually get somewhere within a circle or even an infinite loop. The attention then directs all the energies of the heart into the senseless achievements that only bear the self-centered meaning that is given to it, what you perceive it to be. The ego is a graft that chases its own tails, T-A-I-L-S and T-A-L-E-S. Endless stories that perpetuate ideas which the ego will then pursue. The ego is a graft. I like that indeed. There's lots of pictures in here that you need to see that I can't show you at the minute, but I'm going to go Latin now. Es aqui otabe macuo de Deus com os hominis. Behold, the dwelling of God is within man. A COUR-TS, courts, get to the heart of the matter. The courts of the world are simply symbolic gestures that indicate higher courts beyond this realm, hence the myth of the hearts and the dead being weighed in a duat against a feather. Okay, and we brought to you a davit, D-A-V-I-T, davit, affidavit, and a davit. A davit is a rescue boat, which is the microcosm example in this world for the rescue boat of the moon that is each of us born into this, just bear with me, reality from the word David is cognate with David being derived from the Middle English Daviot and the Middle French Daviette for joiner's cramp, a diminutive of David Cramp. And the feather is the father of truth, which is indeed Osiris, and feather is a synonym for square, as to turn an oar or paddle, while in a canoe, boat, small boat, a representation of movement and fluidity. The square is once again the quarantine or four corners of the earth, representatively and respectively. We've got some Anubis pictures, Egyptian imagery to go through certain aspects of this as well. One's heart cannot weigh heavier than the father. Feather, as this creates desire. Sire is a synonym for father and is a title for man of significant authority. Sired, you sire your offspring as well from your loins. So sire, desire. The prefix of de always signifies something that is away, reduced, or doing the opposite of. So that would be to desire, okay, to deregister, to de facto, all right. We said of before, of fact, court of, de facto. The prefix of de always signifies something that is away from or reduced. So away from facts, de facto, desire. Add your own there as well. Continuously improving. This is version 1. Version 2 will be released Monday. I have a lot more to add to this, but it wouldn't be practical to read it all at once, so it's going to go to version 2 and get extensions in, supplementary later. Think of Vati and Can, all right, and father and godfather and dogfather. That's coming next. Father has been translated into the Portuguese noun estado de espírito, meaning feather, state of mind, character, humour, morale. An alternate noun in the same language is pena for feather, sentence, penalty, pain, and also less common, the term cavale brings forward feather, easel, trestle, giving significance again towards the symbolic trestle board. The Arabic, Filipino, Korean, Romanian and many more languages also showcase this, as Santos has pointed out, and Jordan. There's a key and a code, and Josh and others, too many to mention. This translation in exact correlation with the Egyptian judgment, which weighs one's heart and state of mind, judgment, okay? The answer is not separate from the question. The court is not separate from one's own heart, the judging and the heart and the mind, the tripart. You have heart, which can be made into earth, which is representative of a core of the earth. It has a core, and you have a court. So heart, earth, core and court are all related and relative. A judge, you will know, wears black in a court to signify the father that have died, and those that will be sentenced to serve time behind bars, which symbolises time within or time behind sons. Now, to serve time behind bars, which symbolises the time within or behind the sons, the Hebrew word bar translates as son, okay? And bar is where the spirits are served. As a principle of rebirth, this is definitive. All spirits, and thus the seeds of life, are delivered by the son to the daughter. We've got the moon there. The Hebrew Ivana means moon, which the last two symbols of this same term giving a translation of heart. In this world, a lawyer must also pass the bar, which is a symbolic method for a lawyer to pledge allegiance to the ultimate son, the father of the deity of judgment, Osiris. Father, Son, Holy Spirit connection there, like you've never seen or heard before. Yeah, I know. It's what we do. If one's heart is balanced equally against a Arthur, F, E in brackets, A-T-H-E-R, ether, aether, father, the weightlessness, ether, that individuals is said to be able to move on to. So if one's heart is balanced equally against a ether, father, the weightlessness, ether, the individual is said to be able to move on to Aru, which is guarded by none other than Osiris. Prisons are called correctional institutions, since again it is linked with the heart. A correctional institution, C-O-U-R-T, C-O-R-rectional, C-O-R-rect, correct. To correct something is indeed to straighten it out and make it right. And this is found in the symbol that most everyone is familiar with from school, the tick, the check mark, which indicates correctness. Errors are marked with a red X normally. The tick and the check mark itself is a symbol of Saturn, allegedly, so we find, in this time. But the key to it is found again directly within the word, seeing that check can be traced back meaning root king. To receive a check mark is to acquire the mark of the king Osiris, known as the great builder and architect Chi-Ramabith. Chi-Ram is the king. It was taken down and destroyed by 3 ruffians, which are thought, desire and action. All indications of time and goal chasing. On a clock, the minute hand moves 6 degrees for every minute, while the hour hand moves 30 degrees for every hour. There are 30 degrees of movement in the precession of an age, astrologically speaking. The analogy being that every age is akin to a great hour. Okay? Thus, every 5 minutes that passes in the age we are currently in falls under the minimal influence of each successive age until the hourly age completes itself in the round of 60 minutes. These influences are minute. No, they're not. They're minute. Just as the word implies. That did that to me before. Slight or minuscule. Within the age, the dormant authority is given to the era that Horus, the sun, is currently housed in. I've got some nice diagrams here, Claudio, similar to some that he's shown. I found some. If one does not receive a check mark or approval of the king, they receive an X, X10, okay, which is incorrect, and thus will die on the cross, which is to die in time, or the quarantine of rebirth, Reb Earth, the heart which weighs heavier than the feather. Now, this is interesting. To make the sign of the cross is to symbolise, I don't really want to do it, but I will do it. I'm going to take one for the team. To make the sign of the cross is to symbolise that one, I don't even do it, but this one, yes, is to symbolise that one is crossing themselves out. It is furthermore an upside down cross. If you think about the layout, it's switched from the top up quadrant being that way, upside down again, campaign for nuclear disarmament, upside down cross with the arms broken down that way, and then going back with the arms broken up that way is a powerful rune marking. So the same variant, upside down, inside out, whichever way you want to look at it. But this cross, when you do that one, is seen as making the sign of the cross. It is generally to symbolise that one is crossing themselves out. It is furthermore symbolic of the Hanged Man, the system of the tarot. If you know and have used tarot cards, you will see a man who's on a T-shaped bar, and he will be upside down with his legs like a number 4 shape. One leg is straight and the other leg goes up and crosses here, and then his arms are like this behind his back, hung upside down. If you'd like to search the tarot for that Hanged Man, you will see what I mean, and then overlay that to the imagery of this one flipped, so you're looking at it front on, and it will overlay the Hanged Man tarot card. So a citizen of the United States, as we're going, Egyptian, dead, linkage, legal, lawful, rights, property, access, titles, biblical. Citizens of the United States is a civilly dead entity operating as a co-trustee, co-beneficiary of the public charitable trust. These are the constructive cestacea trusts of the UK-US. This is of the US Inc. under the 14th Amendment, which I brought to you on videos before, and I promised I'd bring back to you and give you the articulation for you to go and chew on and pass around. The 14th Amendment, which upholds the debt of the USA and US Inc. Congressional record, June the 13th, 1967, 15641 to 15646 is the directory area you'll find that referencing for that. The crucifixion then, the crossing and upside down, and the negative dead aspect of these entities and the legal realm. The crucifixion informs us phonetically that all fictions are crossed out, cross of fiction. crucifixion. That which is not the truth is a lie, and therefore is a fiction. Fictional stories are not true, stories in general, news stories, his story. There is no earth as it is commonly dictated and thought of, only a quarantine in time. In Saturn, the Eater, as it's known, as Santos said, and others, but to me, I reference him now heavily on Jordan and Santos here, and a man that I'll leave out until the end of the final publication. In Saturn, the Eater of its own children, the eater of errors, the snake biting its own tail, the Eater. Now spell me theatre, please. The arts are in danger. Oh, the arts need bailing out. Yeah, so not only is it a tax haven for antiquities and tax avoidances and assets and trusts to buy and invest in tax-free investments of such things, the arts, the Eater, like the rapist and etc., the therapist. So you've got the Eater, theatre, actors on the stage. Do you see where we're going and how we're fragmenting other bits and bringing it into the equitable Actors Guild? All the world is truly a stage or a theatre, which is separated as the Eater. All right, remember that one. Chronos, and he's spelled it two different ways, many ways, becomes purveyor to the sands of time. Remember when you used to boil an egg when you were little, if you're my demographic, 40 something, and you used to have your little thingy to tell you when your eggs were done, and used to fascinate you and play with them. Simple little things, no PlayStations and Xboxes and handheld devices, an egg timer, hours of fun, timing different things. Purveyor of the sands of time, and eats the actors, hence the sands of the time, in or characters. To know someone's character is to know their heart, and the link is buffered when phonetically related with care, which is to have heart. It is to have an interest in something or someone, to show concern or even feel exact anxiety over. It is a feeling of the heart, which is where one gets to the heart of the matter, or the centre of the thing. This is the core of any issue. The Egyptians symbolise this with those who failed against the scales and went on to be eaten by Amit. This sends the souls of the eaten back into the internal loop of restlessness. Core is translated into the Dutch word H-A-R-T, as in heart, and French coeur, which means heart. There are many more examples to find to the four corners of the earth. The heart is the courier on the course of this human race. Just as courts are trying to get to the heart of the matter, to court someone is to try and win over their heart, is it not? Through the act of dating and making social advancements. This can lead to that penultimate emotion that is known simply as love. Some say this requires courage, which is to have a lot of heart and spirit, as shown in a plethora of language translations afore ye. To show heart, or to wear your heart on your sleeve, to show one's courtesy, respect and consideration, love, affiliation, namaste, towards others. It is a consideration of the feelings of those one interacts with, something which is missing greatly today. There is no creativity, love and empathy in psychopaths, things like that. They don't have that. So I'll get into that later on about rulers and dictators and laws and murderers and Pol Pots, and then how they can't create, so they need others to create, and how this hierarchy of death is all through the ages. We find millennia after millennia the same thing. The heart is how we coordinate and cooperate, which is what these leaders do not have of the tyrants and empires of the day, and slaughters and capital punishments and sacrifices. The heart is missing. The heart is how we coordinate and cooperate our actions in relationships with one another, or interactions. It is to be cordial as opposed to corrupt. Corruption has turned the heart dishonest and evil, and this creates discord, which is to be without harmony. Harmony, music, and the vibrations of life are all interconnected, and to harmonize correctly is to create the right chords that manifest said harmonization or harmonization. Nikola Tesla: if one wishes to understand the universe, one must understand frequency, resonance, and vibration. The day when modern science looks and acknowledges this fact, it will progress more in one day than it has done in its entirety. I've taken that from mind. You will have to find the exact words of that, but scribes, initiates, scholars of self, you know what we're saying here. The universe is made by phonics, to be fair, light, matter, frequency, chorus, which is also C, Horus, as said earlier. Ergo, the chorus of music oftentimes hit the heart the most. Encore. The choir can make up the larger group that makes individual melodies which can course through ye spirits. A choir is another derivative of heart, with its root being from chorus, as the Dutch translates into K-O-O-R, the German is C-H-O-R, and the French is C-H-O-U-E-R. Mon amis, alright? And Corinthians, biblical, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily arranged, it keeps no records of wrongs, it always protects, always hopes, always preserves, love never fails. Corinthians 1:3, I think 4:8. There you go. That's your chapter and verses. Business itself has obviously put its presence, commerce has obviously put its presence into the heart by creating corporations, which is the body of the enterprise. It is a body run by corpses, the body politic, the corpus juris. See French for the etymological roots. Corpses. The French language provides etymological similarity through the term corpse, meaning body, simply put, all right? Corporations, body, and the biblical church and state connection too. The heart in the body creates the charges, both physical and capitalistic, that brings the debt or the dead back to life. Why do they issue charges in the legal realm? So the charges bring the debt or the dead back to life. When you are, Lord forbid it, when man has a heart arrest and you are out for the count and there is no electronic ECG activity and you've just had an electric shock and it's knocked you 6 foot and now there's no sign of life, what will happen when the paramedics come is they will get the paddles. Let's row our boat. They get the paddles, they put the glue, they don't put the glue on them, no, they put the gel on them and they put them across, yes, arcing, sparking across the heart, the core, the centre, and they will arrest, change the arrest back to locomotive beating again and add the spark, the charge, and the paddles will deliver the charge and they will get the heart beating motive again from the arrest. So the charge brings the dead, and it's the debt, but the dead and the debt back to life. It's a little entendre there for you just a moment to savour. These are the bits where we get mad when we first initially discover these, and then we work to the point of clarity and continuity. So moons and suns, all right. Moon eye, one eye, monotheism is the study of one God. All is Atum. Well, it wasn't all Atum until Akhenaten, the Egyptian deity, started the fascination with the sun, which is Aten, and then made it subsequently from there that way. But monotheistic, the language monosyllabic, monai, moonstrel, menstrual, all of this business, okay? So your monai, the one eye, is iron eye, is death and debt. The symbolism is clear about it. The dead and debt are buried in the banks to collect interest. Let me just expand. To inter is to place a corpse into a grave or tomb, I-N-T-E-R. Hence the inter and rest, okay, are the buried dead at rest. The more debt and dead, the higher the interest rate. The Middle English EST mean E-A-S-T, inter est, which is where the sun and sun, both spellings, rises along with the seeds of debt, from death to life, rebirth, the cycle. The dead feast on the living, and the debt continually collects in numbers and feasts on the charges of the currencies. This is referred to as inflation, where monetary value is lost with every exchange. When there is no more energy left in these notes of exchange, they are dead and thus bankrupt. A rapture occurs. This rupture, this tear, breach, is happening within one's biology continuously. It is called aging. Each rupture is a mini death that eats itself until the entire system collapses. This is the end of the individual and the cessation of life. And the experiences of the system within shall then be unfolded without. Cause and effect are not separate. Money is borrowed, and borrowed is rooted in the term burrow. These holes, burrowing, can be dug into or to great depths. Phonetically speaking, we are drowning in debts, and since commerce is the law of the sea, it indicates correctly the aspect of drowning in depths. As well with any situation that is life or death. To be drowning is rightfully declared an emergency, emerge in sea. Not and sea, emerge in sea. The dead that were buried in the banks of the river's sea burst through, finding themselves in an ocean of the dead. The lost souls seek salvation, spending and saving. A soul can be saved if it believes in the system. Credit means faith for this reason, while currency is delivered in religious denominations, bought and sold, S-O-U-L-E-D. Mortgages are death pledges, and it's life itself that is given as a bond of security. Where the interest rates rise, the dead rise. Every day that monetary system operates is another day of the walking debt. Digital currency game pays homage also with the use of cryptocurrency. A crypt is a chamber, okay, often beneath a church that conceals a coffin or other religious artifacts. Its original meaning from the ancient Greek, crypto, K-R-Y-P-T-O, as in Superman's kryptonite, spelling crypto, getting there later with the green emerald castle of the yellow brick road. But for now, crypto meant to hide. We buy B-U-Y, ships, boy and boying. We sell, both three spellings here, C-E-L-L, battery, S-E-L-L, commerce, and S-E-L, ending of council. So we buy or we sell ocean salt water because we are buying keeps business afloat. Cash floats from shipping to shopping, all right? Your shopping and ordering of items, your product will be delivered and it will be shipped to you. From shipping to shopping. Checks, kings are cashed, C-H-C-H-E-D, C-A-C-H-E-D, yeah, and C-A-S-H-E-D, since to cache something is to hide it, especially in the ground. A definite correlation with crypt. There is a need for grounds to create charges, your ground, your earthed, down to earth, and every transaction, as in transaction and transaction, is another electrical charge or payment to death. It is a transaction, a phonetic stretch. Perhaps one may want to question that again the next time they walk into the entrance of a store. Entrance carries the meaning of to put a spell on somebody, beguile them, overpower and hypnotize. Enough charges in the currency game and the heart earth of a king can be restarted. The question is how many grounds and how many charges Arges is one of the cyclopes, the one-eyed creatures, the cyclops of, Arges. Amen Re was known as the Hidden One, with the latter altered to Ammon. Ammon is referred as money, material, wealth and greed. And this is the indicator that the heart has lost its pulse. It is no longer polarizing between the forces of life and death, but has stayed on the opposite side. The river flows in one direction and the life is one side of that polarity. The ultimate end ultimately is death, the negative polarity, zero energy, depletion, cell empty, which proves over and over again there is but one polarity that remains in control of the final say in the life of every individual, and that is the negative polarity. This creates the circle, with the prefix of circle being another derivative of Kor, the goddess of Siri, that turns men into swine, is also linguistically linked with circle and thus Kor. You have occur. Why does this not all occur to more individuals, or occur? Most likely because it is not meant to. Even when presented in a manner which is more easily assimilated, the reasoning mind finds it also fantastic, absurd, outside the realm of one's own limited possible view. We can lead a human to knowledge, we cannot make it think, said Kevin's post the other day, and it was a horse picture saying that, Mr. Ed. We can lead a human to knowledge, but we can't make it think. I thought I'd woke up in a Mandela effect. When I read that, I ran around checking my dimensional, and it was all the same, so thanks for that, Kev. Due to the preconceived psychological tendency towards the denial of the unknown, all of that which is meant to remain august, arcane and hidden continually remain occult, even when presented right in the open, hence hidden in plain sight. Cardio reveals the hidden heart of God. Car is rooted once again in Kor, while the Italian Dio means God. The dwelling of God is within man. If the individual holds the heart of God, then so does every other individual. In this then poses a magnanimous problem. Isn't God supposed to be one entity and one being? If God is one being, yet every person has free will to do as their heart desires, does this not in itself negate the one motion of every action that God would be taking, as opposed to the grotesque variety of individual actions that are being taken every day by every heart? If there is truly free will, there cannot be a single action of God to do what God wills, because there are too many variated and emotionally driven actions being carried out within the multitudes of separate ways by every single person who carries out their heart of God. The Greeks represented this with the term idios, meaning one's own, personal, distinct and separate. Of course, it very much looks like idiot, because idios is derived from the Greek. So idiot in legalese, one who is not trained and licensed to understand. Idios, idiot, I like that finding. It's derived from Greek idiote, idiotes. That means one's own private layman, Boom! When you get to the root of it, we get to the root of it like no other. Happy introductions, and we're on page 28 of 61, a third of the way there. If you're loving it, give me a fist bump. Sorry for the pronunciation. One's own private layman, we're still on Greek idios. Would it not be the very definition of our individual lives to be one's own? And then I go hero. That's where that comes from. From back then, I saw this, saved it, channel, fist bump, be one's own, idios, hero, in some way. Then it says, private, are each of us not personal and distinct? So A little bit of editing there. Let's go from the top. This is the Greeks represented this with the term idios, meaning one's own, personal, distinct, and separate. Of course, it very much looks like idiot because idios is indeed derived from the Greek idiote. That means one's own, private, layman. Say that again. Greek idiotes means one's own private layman. We're idiots at law. Shh. There you go. That is extra because we love you and because you're struggling and because there's so much and because it's very articulate. Have it all for free. The life's work up to this point, bosh. There you go. Clean hands, sanitized, and it is what it is, okay? We will help you going forward. We have an amazing amount to build upon, expand upon, and use constructively, effectively. Going, into the private there. Let's go on furthermore. But the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that you share, do not eat of it, for in that day thou shalt eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Genesis chapter and verse 2:17 KJV. Good and evil, duality, reality, the creation of one form, leads to the end of another, and a cessation of immorality opens the doors to morality, and thus death. Could this be seen as an idiotic move? Certainly. In fact, it's most likely one of the stupidest things that any soul could ever do. There cannot be separation from absolutes and ultimates. That's Hermetica and other such, let alone each other. The greater the struggle to fight this truth, the more difficult the journey becomes. You don't want to hear that? I'm sorry. That's how it actually is. If you're worthy of doing something right, do it yourself. Yeah, you want something doing right. You can't lead a human to thinking. To think of a spirit as divided into a host of individuals, each embodied in a separate form, is to think of it in terms of error. To the mystic, the idea of the growth of his own spirit apart from the growth of the spirit of all is inconceivable. To that which grows to the point where it bursts through the egg of existence is consequently not the spirit, but what the Greeks term the rational soul, or the mental knower, which represents the highest form of individuality. It therefore follows that it is impossible for the individual to have a spirit more highly evolved than any other. As for one area of the sea to be wetter than any other, the degree of development is thus measured first by the extent to which the parts of the lower nature have been synchronized, and secondly by the interval of quality between them and their spiritual cause. No one has a consciousness higher than another, all equal. For there is but one consciousness in the universe, he who is presumed to have. Let's just take a break there a minute. I'd like to mute and just take a quick break. I need to ask a family question. If you want to get a drink or something, toilet break, go now, and we'll be back in a minute. Ta-da, we're done. We are done. Continuing on. One consciousness in the universe, he who is presumed to have a higher consciousness is simply one whose organisms are fine enough to manifest more completely the potentialities of this single consciousness. Mankind may be considered as a vast organism with one spirit or self manifesting through an infinite number of intellectual and physical organisms. That would be the hive mind put a different way. The 100th monkey principle, another way. The quantum entanglement. The documentary on YouTube called Superhuman that's going on the front page of the .com later today. The latter deluded into the belief that they are free and independent. On a still higher level, this composite spirit of all mankind, which is merely an expression of the universal spirit of all things, is deluded in turn by the concept that mankind is different and separate from the rest of universal being. Such terms as old and young, highly evolved and less evolved, spiritual and material should be applied to personalities and individualities. For in the sphere of consciousness they do not exist. As the Absolute is ageless, being all age, no part can technically be older than the other. Hence difference is an illusion of the mind, but necessarily, however, to the present evolution of life, yet without foundation in divine reality. Manly P. Hall. What? That was a Manly P. Hall quote. Yeah, it was. And I've used it in a document. Yeah, I have. Am I a Satanist occultic worshipper? No, I'm not. But I thought spirit divided into host, that's about God. What do you know about Manly P. Hall? What do you think about Aleister Crowley? What about H.P. Lovecraft and any other more? There are a few in these pantheons and pan of energies, spirits, gods, and that's the level that we're going into, not necessarily into their works, but into the consciousness development, higher, second tier. Immortality is impossible for the generated. That which is not the absolute, without solution, addition, subtraction, one or man is mortal, since there has already been a starting point. All beginnings are tethered with their endings and vice versa. To know both good and evil, beginning and ending, therefore longevity is the only possible within a generated state of being, but not indefinite perpetuation within one generated special purpose vehicle, shell or sleeve. This chair's squeaky, and because I'm a weirdo and I know about sounds and presentations, I'm going to get a non-squeaky chair. There we go. We're going to have a little adjustment. I'm going to bring that this way. Get rid of the mask. That was fun, wasn't it? That which is already divided cannot transcend into an undivided state of absoluteness. It is for this reason that any who declare themselves to be God are announcing an absurdity of the grossest proportions. The Vicar of Christ from the Vatican nation and the papacy, for one. The grain of sand cannot become the beach, but it is absorbed by it, and contains within itself the properties that are manifest within the beach. Only that which contains all things in all possibilities can be free from the devices of conflict. You will see my other works on Egyptology, Egyptian myths, gods, deities, the nun and so forth there, the Hermetica, the Kabbalion. There's lots of influences coming out of this that it all correlates to, and other authors and publications. On that which contains all things, in all possibilities, can be free from the devices of conflict, which pull energy in and out of the multitude of potential directions. Once this energy is extracted, it cannot then be re-injected, so to speak. When energy is expended, alternative sources must be drawn into an individual's being. This is then regarded as secondary energy, which is not initially inherent to the individual, and is therefore comprised of properties which are separate from nature. You are what you eat. This exchange of initial energy for the future rain, forms of it certainly compromises, yes AD, the primary state and creates the energetic markers which are the points that manifest changes to the constitution of the individual, the banking constitution, the British constitution, the constitution of you, I, the estate biological. Many of these changes are very small, nearly undetectable, but over a certain length of time they come to accumulate into noticeable alterations. One day you're a baby, some years later you're middle-aged, some time later you're an old man. Increment, you don't notice each day what's happened, but over years, times, you will see the differences in photographs with the years separating them. There can also be more severe forms of energy that bring about very noticeable modifications in very short intervals of time. Intense emotional states like now, brought about through external circumstances like now, and situations which can draw into the fabric of one, being magnanimous, foreign, energetic accumulations which produce mutative results. Word to the wise, it does indeed fear. A question that may be asked then is, how to avoid this energetic joy division? The void, the emptiness, can be taken away by filling it. In this way, the nothing, everything, is being stripped of its absolute property. There is now something, but it remains unsatisfied because it's incomplete. See the none, and in the beginning there was the none. In the attempt to bring back itself to completion, that's the publication that I've done previously with regards to Egyptian mythology. In the attempt to bring itself back to completion, there continues to be more absorption until the fullness becomes satiated, albeit temporarily. It is always temporary when coming from a source that is indeed divided. This may take an eternity to swing the pendulum fully in the direction of completion, if ever it is possible. How can a divided aspect take on all that would be undivided? It unfortunately cannot. Only when one has everything will they be left with nothing. The cycle will have completed itself. Absolute fullness and absolute emptiness are indeed one of the same. The mind which is the time has corrupted the timeless heart into believing that there is somewhere to go. It erroneously looked the gift horse in the mouth and found there was no escape. There could never be total and complete satiation, and hence the endless chase has begun. With the beginning of time and hours and Horus, there was by necessity the beginning of the great work. In this endless pursuit, every individual character, there are ever more divisions, and division by its very nature is founded upon destruction. Is there a true willingness to stop the cycle of the ages? There can never cease its turning until we stop turning ourselves for it. Or must history repeat itself endlessly? When a heart, earth, is broken, there is immense pain, and within this pain is the opportunity for meditation. Healing occurs within this understanding, the dark place, and for this awareness to exist, it must be experienced, it must be felt, and it must be lived. Continuing on, come on, past the pictures. The legal fiction now, and the strawman. The personality, the estate, the entity, the equitable asset is denoted by the all capital letters. A copy of womb man, a private calling and clan made at birth. Okay, and registration. Let's live edit that now. Tidied up. The corporation of the UK government made it for you. First comes the foundation identity document in the form of a military church issued certificate of live birth or certificate of birth. It's created at the hospital after mum has indeed born man, and man has been birthed. Look at my previous videos, hokum, magic words, and etc. Maritime Admiralty, birthed and shipped and arrested. This is, a second document, supplementary document that will go on to that previous one that you've got on this channel. So we know the certificates are two. I've mentioned them before. There is one that happens at the hospital and there's one that happens at the Registration General Registry Office. So keep these in your mind. They use this information on the first certificate, of birth, and at the event of the second coming of man, not Jesus. And that would be the registration with the General Registry Bondsman, GRO, officer for the Crown Corporation of the City of London. A trust is then constructed and the citizenship is then birthed as of that registration date. if you go back to what I read out about Amendment 14, this will tie in with what you've heard there, but we've got America and Anglo, so it's not all exclusive one or the other. I've mixed it, but I manage Anglo and I'm aware of American, so I manage and focus on the Anglo side, because there's a lot of Americans doing and preaching and talking. There isn't much telling us where to get the first foundation identity document known as Certificate of Live Birth, and if there was, who was saying it and where are the videos. And judging by your reactions and happiness, it was a long time coming, and ones that knew about this coveted the information. We got a little picture there of inclusio unus est exclusio alterius, which is going to leave that there, and it needs editing into, and I'm going to encapsulate on that. We've done that before. But the inclusion of one is the exclusion of another. The certain designation of one person is an absolute exclusion of all others. And that's got 11 Coke 58B Bergin versus Forbes 293 KY 456 -169 SW.2D 321325 for the references in that statement for the statutory interpretation. So if you look at birth certificates and they include stillborn, stillbirth, they exclude all others. And the second foundation document is formed and created, the legal birth certificate of registration. It has child's name and surname upon it. The event is complete. We find a forename and a middle name, main, that are all lowercase, style of text, and then the father's name is applied in all capital letters under the field child. The father's surname applied for the baby. It has the father's surname on. Remember this, and please go on and check upon it. Remember the warning from the scriptures not to take the father or the feather's name, main, in vain. We have the Immaculate Conception, insemination, and the spark of the zygote. Then is the natural flesh and blood womb man that is naturally born of the waters of mum, of little gods. Then we have the registration date with the state. Then we would have a christening, possibly, date shortly after, bar mitzvahs and so forth, depending on what, the type of religion. Then we have a final exit day, when the ghost, the spirit and the soul exit to the quantum heavens and the matrix. So the certificate of live birth, COLB, is first. Then at the event of registration comes the birth certificate via the informant mother. Birth certificate, citizenship, second coming of man. Birth certificate is viewed by splspro.com as indeed the second coming of man. God, being no respecter of persons, granter of dominion. When we say God, we've got God, Lord, Creator, Messiah, Saviour, Jesus, Yahweh. Yes, there's lots of titles, names, split titles and things with this codified language that they're giving you here. So God, granter of dominion, not Lord God, not Creator, just God, is no respecter of persons. Man could be viewed as granters of dominions and therefore gods, dogs, and little ones in the image of. So man is no respecter of persons. Don't assume and put me as being man. So woe man is little God, procreator, settlor, granter, made in reflection in the image of the Creator, Elohim, Lord, times 3. DNA fused possibly from the Anunnaki by the Lord, as described in chapter 17 by Abraham no less. The Law Society are legally unable to interact with flesh and blood natural man. So they created this corporate technology and trading paper certificates with energy in around 1933. Make a note of this date, please. Remember 1931 and the significances? Do not fret, pet. splspro.com have publications to release to you later to highlight the timelines of events in chronological order. This info will be given to you on the ongoing second tier of your Masters Guild in late 2020. So in legality, contract, civil and criminal procedures, the corpses and foreign entities, they have to interact with man as a fiction because they're all corporations, foreign entities in the waters, the seas of commerce. Corporations cannot interact with man, the principal, settler, grantor, executive in office, etc. So they made a straw man and constructed a statutory legal trust. It is commonly called the straw man because it has no soul and is spiritually dead. Much like in the film The Wizard of Oz. Gold is weighed in ounces. There was a yellow brick road that led the characters up to a green emerald castle with the man behind the curtain as the Great Wizard of Oz. The characters are the Tin Man, TIN, tax identification number. The Cowardly Lion represents the common layman and their inability to manage the affairs of their various estates, lost and scared under attack and threats, reliant upon the nanny state. The Scarecrow is full of straw and is a humanoid man, ergo straw man. Enough said. I'm looking for the chairperson. That's right, I would like to behold the chairperson. You know, the corporations that have chairpersons. Oh, I need to speak to the chair. Hello. Pinocchio's brother gone wrong. Also, check out when Monopoly was introduced, the family game of asset acquisition, commercial intercourse, war, played with paper, worthless money. I do believe the man used to have a monocle around his eye. If you do research and have got time, subsequent to all of this research and discovery, not that man has, you will find a recent Mandela effect which claims the Monopoly man has never had a monocle on his eye. I believe it has. He did. Back in day, I haven't got a game to check, but just as a point of note and a splinter from all of this, did the Monopoly man ever have a monocle? And if you say yes, would you like to search and see if he still has? What? 1 minute. I have got some appointments later today, and someone's trying to... One aid is liking the mask. I'll link you up with them later. I'll put some things on the community aid about the mask. We're going on flight for the moment because I need to keep the thoughts. Bless you all. I'll get your questions afterwards, so if I can't see them, please ask them again. Make a note of what you've asked and I will get him back to you. Alright, I need to continually. Page 37 of 61, over halfway through. Are you loving it? Is this what you was thinking we were going to come up with? Are you ecstatic? Are you disappointed? Is this something that's making sense? Are the pennies dropping? This is just scratching the surface. Just get ready with what we're doing at the minute. There is a lot going on. We are prepared to protect, all right? Monopoly, yes. The man in the monocle, Rothschild, you're born delivered as a product of the ward of the military state in a hospital delivery room as a product. A certificate of live birth is produced by the Surgeon General, all right, the registrar at the hospital. There is also a sister on the church, on the delivery and maternity wards, all right? So a sister of the church present on the wards, yes, maternity, sister. Who is it that does all that? Why does the church, not the woman, do that? What is the functionality? Merger of church, state, hospital and army. Look at what a hospital was and when they were first used as, medics and so forth in the army. Also remember that the army has a priest in there to perform any last rites of passage and indeed confessions. It's a bit ironic really. I can hear Hitchens going, come on, that we'll leave him there. Then we have the dog tags that they wear for identity, the dog soldiers, the dogs of war, and indeed dogma. Dog, reversed, God, no God, Dogon, Vatican, the Vati, father, feather, can, Spanish, derivative, shortened, canine, canna, dog again. Dog star, star dog, cirrus, and the stars that way, cannabis, canna, canine again, cannabis, bi, bilingual, bi, curious, two, okay, and then cannabis, canonizations of the bibliothèque, cannibalistic, cannibalization, so there's your extension root etymological referencing for me up to the minute to the dog and the book, and we see dog two within the Latin name for weed, cannabis, again, two dog, cannabis, interesting. What happens is, getting back to the registry room, mum and dad, not the parents, the pair that rent, they normally are the ones who register the offspring, the assets, the childbirth. This appointment is seen as an event, and the fact that mum is labelled in legalese as an informant speaks volumes. Declarations and informat ions of what exactly? The quantum parsyntax negative positive breakdown of informat ion, information, declaration, registration, regi, vagina, So in Britain, we have seen the merger of the church and the state, while across the pond in America, the United States government and incorporated, etc., they have kept church and state separate from its constitution and codes. In God they do trust, and so help them God. Are some of the only times I've heard the Creator being referenced. If mum and dad do not register the offspring in Britain, the UK will threaten them, and they will be told mum will be taken to court according to what the law is threatening. I believe Hugh Grant, to name one, has some further reference and information upon this if you look in the archives. They will take the birth certificate that she registered as an informant, the informant that mum has had a child, and the state then make a duplicate of this private, personal sensitive data, and they birth a citizenship. This is further denoted by the typeface of the grammar used. In all black capital letters, like on a grave tombstone, is what we asked the Registrar General at Liverpool about the capital font typeface for father's surname after the forename, middle name, where it just says name in the box. Forename, middle name, name constitutes just name, and then surname. So it says name and surname. It doesn't say name, forename, surname. Name, David Jason, surname, Jeremita, or my father's original Irish name, Hanlon, all capitals. Why is it like that? Oh, it doesn't mean anything. If it doesn't mean anything, why is they taking the liberty of doing that? So yes. Moving on. You see that on a gravestone, all capital letters. All company names are always capital letters. There's a common theme here for the cognitive ones. Mum and dad do not enter any contract or trust willingly, knowingly, under full disclosure. This is a constructed and unconscionable agreement knowingly or under full disclosure. The name of this trust is the Cest KV, all right, and you got the Cest K. It's French and that's not Latin, so if you're trying to see the Latin for that and you don't get a translation, have a look at your Francais. There are three of these proclamations and acts. We call them the CQV. They've called them the CQV. We know them as, and they are from the 1500s, the 1600s, and indeed the 1700s. They are all listed in part 1 of your foundation key competence sovereign guild that we've given you. Now in 1600s, the prodigal son was expected to return in the 6th day of the 6th month of 1666. I kid you not. I goat around, God of all things, goat, no joke. He did not show up, nonetheless. All right, the church and the military state regard a natural flesh and blood, corporeal, we say in church speak, corporeal, living son, daughter. They regard them as a legal fiction, all right? They didn't turn anybody into anything. There was no magic or hokum done. The church and the military state, the monarchy, they regard natural flesh and blood. They assume, okay, through ignorance and their own societies, measures and rules. They regard the corporeal living son and daughter, man or woman, as a legal fiction, a trust, a bonded asset, denoted by the watermark in said bonded paper, reflective of the water's currency, is why you have a mark in paper. The bond or the equitable asset now has a certain value allocated to it. It will be millions of pounds or dollars, or your local currency denominations if you're in the Commonwealth, usually dollars. It is called a bond because that effectively becomes financially, technocratically traded thereafter on the stock markets of high frequency international traders. Search and look up special purpose vehicles. I have brought to you the case law and inner workings of judges, years, setups, relationships, and articulation of these, previously done. When we look at the years when these were incorporated and used by the corporate city bankers of London, private offshore tax havens, and etc., we look at the word bond, we look at the word stock, and we brought to you that it's medieval. The stocks were wooden, and they had the village idiot in. They weren't criminal. It wasn't a corporal punishment, corporal, penal. It was just village idiot generally, and that was your what? Your stock. Stocks hold things. Again, the similarities: flock, stock, folk. Not getting there at the minute. I'm not going to fleece you. High frequency market trading, bonds, this one, leather and so forth. Thank you, Kev, for the leather comment in that other chat. I did note that. So they trade souls using birth certificates. And I want you to look at the technocratic and technocracy. I have a document or 3 to upload, and value being traded with paper, and how that was incorporated. The year 1931 is specific. Why? Scholars of self. And why then would you see 1933 technocratic? Governments influence corporations, corporations influencing governments, and types of corporate. Oh yeah, corpses. Come on, this is all the nails in the coffin, I'm afraid, today, and I am so excited. This document is nigh on finished. It has a lot more to expand, which is coming in the subsequent up to late December. It will be released. This is your freebie, all right, to get you on the land. It looks like the bankers of London and the churches and the monarchs are trading souls using birth certificates. The corporate city of London and its private banking entities see the spider's web. Shaxton did an excellent publication there. I've posted a 6-hour documentary with all of the guts of this in the BCCI, the tax, the HMRC, the fraud, the collapse, the everything is in that 6-hour video. Well done, Nonna, for taking it in 1 hour installations. That's how we chew on it. If it's too big a bone, we'll gnaw it down in little bits, and it will still be gone. Whereas some of the eager ones come along, see a 6-hour video, and they do it in a night, and then they're back the next day rewatching it. I don't know how you do that, but thank you, and your comments are well appreciated. So trading souls using birth certificates via the UK monarch, the corporate city of London, and its private banking, okay? The entities there, they have offshore tax havens, and we've got the Vatican Nation City, we've got Washington City in play, and London City. In Washington, I'm also interested in Delaware, I'm also interested in the Columbia Tri-Star State, the Securities Exchange Commission, the Bank of Basel, Switzerland, and a great deal of other areas that aren't necessarily exclusive to Washington, but via Vatican, London, Washington, and also you got America from London, as Washington stems out on 2 threads with the Vatican coming that way. Then you've got a loop feed back to, crazy, I know. Every human being that is being registered to the state, the crown, ends up becoming regarded as a bond. That is subsequently traded on the stock market. So the private name you have, David and Jason, all right, they would be private to us, but they could get used in the public, no problem. The family name, the estate, Jeremita, Smith, etc., Glow, Indian Glow, that would be only able to be used in commerce publicly with express written consent. And as it's theirs, they use that all the time with their own express written consent until we find out what be going on there. So humans, mans, okay, it's your calling, private man calling. I'll expand on this later. And that might be lowercase, but then you'll see on letters, if you go and dig around in your archives, you'll find a letter that's got little, not these names, but I use my own name so you can relate to it. Little Christian, little middle, so David, Jason, all little, maybe a capital letter denoting a noun and what it is. There's a thing and an object there, and then the Jason, the same, capital J, rest lowercase, but then the family name, boom, all capital. The cognomen, the weaponized war, biblical type comparisons, Christian remedy and law influence onto attaching the private innocent creditor to the debtor in a sinful way. You call it joinder, you call it many things. So interesting where we are and how we can intricately break this down and bring it to you. Page 38 of 61. It's very dark to some extent, but we have the processes and the certificate that we said comes from the hospital you would go to the hospital and ask them now for that foundation identity document, which is classified as a medical record, and it's only ever kept at the hospital. The Office of National Statistics for Anglo-Britain, Britain should I say, and you've got America across the pond, and maybe the Commonwealth's Office of Vital Statistics. Use the inclusio alterius exclusio rule there. Ask them if it includes one, it excludes the other. Tell them you think there may have been a mistake. If you have a copy of all of your medical hospital records and your foundation identity documents for that event, and not necessarily for man, all right, but the certificate of birth, well done. If you haven't, let us know when you do, and we will tell you what we're going to be doing with those, and how we will protect for what's coming in the world stage from health organisations, military members of the hospitals, government and state there, with Trump and his recent revelations, Putin, China. It will be a case of expecting the worst, but planning for the best, all right? We plan for the best, we expect the worst, or we're going to expect the best and plan for the worst. Yeah, I know what it should be, but in this case, I'm sorry, it is the other way around. As I said it, I didn't get it the wrong way around. So one, let's talk about the birth certificate. It protects you from 0 to 18, 18 legal age. So you are civilly inactive. You are unable to be attacked by the state from 0 to 18 in Anglo-Britain lands here. Once you're at 18, legally liable, and you become active, then how you view yourself and how you renounce yourself and what data you give to them through your own volition is how the game is played now, the game of life. It's important that you know that the certificate of birth is how things are charged and managed, and you are effectively under that protection, which is not a bad thing at all when we review it and you say fraud and deception, and I'll cover that later. The fraud and the deception and the anger part, because I'm not in any way throughout this video, document and presentation defending them. I'm not saying that it's right, and I'm not saying that I agree with it or the trust or this channel. What I'm saying is through the discovery you grow and you learn and you see, and the words slightly change to what you use and how you see it, or maybe not. Once the offspring then reach the legal age, you're out of protection of that certificate. You're civilly active, okay? You're civilly active civilians, okay? And that certificate is not to be used as evidence of identity. It's an equitable instrument, and we are the holder of it in due course. It's an insurance policy, a clause, you know, a Santa Claus, and you can use it to pass on and use that trust to discharge liabilities, all right, charges and such things as. So the birth certificate, the second document, is not to be used as evidence of identity. Do not, you know, take note, the holders in due course, of the warning of bold at the lower part, the footer of the equitable instrument and the birth certificate. All of this is done without anyone ever knowing, without any formal agreements, or you know, even though it's to do with your soul and your life and debt and sin and civil and how it explodes later on. This is just standard church, state, monarchy, banking agreements since 1931. We go back to 1302 and subsequent proclamations thereafter from the papacy and the bulla papal, but we're sticking with the modern era because we've done a lot of that in the beginning. And this is done by the agencies that the government created and owned, crown agencies. This has been happening since the early 1900s. What they've done is sometimes said by some as fraud. Some have remarked, including myself on this channel years ago. Now, I am not in any way defending these despicable deeds. Alas, once one's intelligence is big enough to see the full picture, we can now see it's not fraud per se, a more spiritual quandary, and one that can be remedied if one knows the correct lang and lingo to command, and what pathways indeed to use. Do not stray from the path, because the jungle is massive. Incredible. To escape out from the public liabilities and debtor and into the private as a creditor in full grace of the Creator. So that's about the pathways to use to get to that point. It is true the Crown take the offspring's birth certificate and regard it as a dead legal person, an entity. Once the anon of 18 comes around. So they assume that you are that. They're looking for their own registered property. And if you answer to that and you give the name in vain and you volunteer, then woe betide you. And we look at the legal maxims for the precedent of which they have. And you cannot argue anymore, because we're here to take that. And if you want to, I will gladly, intelligently, respectfully argue with you. And I'd like to hear your counter. I am looking at going to a court soon to defend somebody. Property, blood and children. We are looking at doing DWP, class action. We're looking at doing a great many massive, magnificent, powerful things that you don't know about that are in the background, which is why we're quiet a bit. Do not volunteer, or be wary of when you do. Do what you want, and don't tell you any legal advice or what to do. But if you volunteer any information, give me your name, even if it sounds John Smith. No, don't, because you've uttered. All right, do not volunteer. Be careful. Consider when you do of your own free volition, even if it's in peer, enforced, or if it's a judge or whatever it is. Be careful of what you give and how you give it. Some things should stay private. Took me a while to learn. I hear what you're saying. Regarding this legal person and its data, once you of your own volunteer, free volition, give the legal name, date of birth, national insurance, social security number, the officers and agents will recognise that as one of their properties, such as even within an iron horse, car and vehicle, driver, etc. In this case and scenario, we're talking blood and certificates and man. The birth certificate is making billions of pounds and dollars all around the world. Your data self, your strawman, is considered a dead legal entity, okay? And the corporations of the city of Babylonium interact with it, not with you, man, fact. Legal person, natural person, jurisdictional person, an artificial person, are 4 persons I'd ask you to look at. Then you've got natural flesh and blood womb man. I know it's weird. I'm going to get a clip from Jimmy Carr that somebody sent me. Womb man. Hilarious. Thank you for that. It's brilliant what you're finding. Is ye the reader of this document, man, private, sentient, so however you put yourself there, just not person, please. Now you'll notice on hospital, financial and legal, such as a summons to court is sent to an address that one resides at. Notice that these notices, documents, invitations, they're not in man's private capacity and calling. All forms of commercial intercourse, and that's what it is, intercourse, are always in all capitals. Font style, and we reference the Styles Manual for further clarification that all capital text are a foreign lingu age. They would be what? Oxford Styles Manual, Oxford Book of Linguistics for Britain, and for Commonwealth across the pond, and for legal reasons, including international ones, you'd look at the Chicago Style Manuals. A corruption of text in a body of text. And we note the bastardization and the dogma associated with the Church, Catholicism, Ancient Latin, Dog Latin of the dog soldiers. There is your first clue on how to recognise what level of laws and codes man is indeed facing at as a non-representative in office for thy person. One can always question and say, what level of law does the court lie in at present? Woo man is not the debtor, defendant. Man may claim many titles, seldom the previous. I'm here in a non-representative capacity. Okay, we are here, the party, in a non-representative capacity. By special appearance. We're here to help you administer this debt exponentially. So SPLS Pro and I have started to show ye it is far more beneficial to act as the part of the agent, executive, secretary, principal in office, the data controller. We choose not to accept the full public commercial liabilities associated with claiming the father's name in vain. Give me your name. If I give you my name, will you accept it? Yes. Okay, the name is yours and all liabilities. Bosh. See you later. Trustee, fiduciary. Right. We of this world. Yeah, we are of this world, but we play no part in it. Remember that. Lest we be deceived. In the end times, who's going to come? A false saviour, a deception. There shall be much Decepticons, if you're a Transformer 1986 fan. Soundwave I have become. Because they do not have, you know, let me read that again. Because they do not, all they have is the entity of theirs, the crown copyright creation. They don't own and have authority with man at all. Only certain biblical or hermetical, universal, natural, divine and positive connections can be put to man, I would argue. What the legal law society, your penal code, penitentiaries, courts, troopers have access to is that special purpose vehicle known as the legal person. And that's what they always interact with. It's the only way. Dan and his data self is a brilliant United Kingdom, Britain analogy for you to understand. There is you, man, and then there is data self, legal, strawman, fiction, entity, estate. So who is reaping the rewards of all the value of this commercial, legal, biblical deceit, I hear you cry? I'm glad you asked. It looks to us that there are some elite families. They're not elite, but we understand them as that previously. They have got a different name. I'll refrain from calling them that on this family type cast. And the corporations that benefit and profit we've seen, such as the Federal Reserve, which seemingly now belongs to the royal family. We've got the HMRC, IRS, recently added. The Fed has gone back to US state government control via Trump's administration. There are places that the funds and transfers ended up. The Vatican has got a lot of gold, offshore tax haven, Bermuda, Barbados, Panama, Jersey. Well, you know, not connected with Britain at all and England, totally separate. They've got their own independence and we just happen to. So once you have registered all of any of your properties at your peril barrel, you look at the significance between the noticeable and critical differences of person's signature and man's private or woman's private autograph. A legal signature on behalf of a person. All persons are indeed legal entities and only exist on paper formats, so they are dead. That's how it rolls. Legal signatures are covered within the Uniform Commercial Codes, which is for and on behalf of the strawman. An autograph is the natural flesh and blood man, woman's, not a fictitious legal person, soulless dead entity. Autograph is the natural flesh and blood man. That's why we do that. You can attach with it a thumbprint. Remember, we ask for celebrities' autograph, not a signature, sign of nature. Duck allographs and see what you come up with. An autograph is a lawful mark of man and can be accompanied by a thumb mark, not a print. This is important to get right. It is by its very definition and essential that you know the importance and difference between a print or prints, the thumb print, and a mark of flesh, a mark of blood, a mark of man, natural man, the mark of womb man, and mark my words. A signature is what you're signing day to day, legally, so the government appointed agencies and agents can go into your accounts, trust, TDA, and take credits for their payment. Every time you sign a commercial piece of paper, you can rest assured that your signature is then being monetized and secured. That's why we shake hands, fist bump, and testify. We don't necessarily ask you to prove your intent by furthermore legally, So be very skeptical about everything and anything you sign and how you sign it, what capacity, with or without liability. All right. But it will be secured and monetized by private banks, by everything that you do, agreement, applications, all of it, all that you ever sign, credit card, job application, online applications, digital, all right, as well as physical. All paperwork is considered as paperwork. The banks receive funds from your trust fund from that TDA, CQV certification of forms. Fees and non-disclosed costs being discharged against your birthright and trust fund without us ever knowing. Such a visit to hospital in Britain, the deductions and payments are paid via contribution basis from wages in the form of national insurance deductions by HMRC and UK Treasury, but no payment is asked for at the hospital. You pay weekly, monthly, contribution based, and they have the national insurance deductions for that. It was and will never be disclosed to ye. I have produced, a 6-hour documentary review of all of this financial, technical, inner corporate, London and foreign offshore sitters trust information, and I have the required info on all the finer details for ye, and it's there for you to go and get in your own time. All of this is done with non-disclosure, and it was and is still considered by most as fraud in the lawful dissent, constitutional, Magna Carta and common law rebellion realms. Once you discover all that has transpired and hold a clearer and more or less full picture of the setup, it appears less like fraud, alright, I can't believe I'm saying this, and more like a game between God and the devil, alright, of the scales and the whole. I've done my best to try and put this to you within this, up to page 40 of 61. Wow. Once you discover all that has transpired, we have found the devil in the details. And I face him, and you have faced him and stared him in the face, in and at many domains and areas. There was a devil's advocacy. See Kevin for reference to the devil's advocate. Can't think, Kev, it went blank, but I know what you mean. I'd like more on that. The wording more suitable to the actions and claims of fraud would then be unconscionable actions and deeds at law spiritually. They're not limited to that, that's just a start, alright? If man evokes the power coming with Jesus as Christ, well, that status, standing and capacity can be very beneficial in a Christian Roman cult, civil participation, legal, non-lawful, arbitrary, de facto, non-de jure domain of secular codes. We got Bibles. What's that? We got faith. We don't need Bibles. Hear my recital. It's quite vital. I hold the title. We got height on the opposite of Nital. Roman cult, civil participation, legal, non-lawful, arbitrary, de facto, non-de jure domain of secular codes. Needs putting into a tune. Defaulted upon one's legal person by default out of Westminster and via tacit acquiescence of the assumption and presumption of the court. The game is rigged. Red-eyed Jedi, self-scholars of self and law. So you have also those assumptions, legal, which we mentioned earlier, and the maxims of law, the assumptions of court. Let me explain status, standing and capacity briefly again to you all. What is status? It's not just for Facebook. What is public and what is private? Yes, so you know your status, public or private. There is only two really. There might be a third, LGBT. I don't get on to that one. There's a lot of statuses for sexuality, but just for legal and lawful. Yes, how would you become public or private? Yes, there's many other statuses for man, but we're not there. We're in this one. So you are public or you are private at law. Simple, done. And all legal persons are public. All man is private. So that's it. That's your status part of status, standing and capacity. What do you mean by status? It's either public or private. And all legal persons are public. Yeah? All persons, even if you made a lawful person, whatever that would be, your natural person then, with the inherent constitutional and whatever rights that are going to be applied to that, man is private. So you have all caps, lowercase, man. Equity, persons, not man, alright? If you're confused about equity and think that that's going to make you flesh and blood man, it puts you as a private person and gives you different rights. Standing at law, in a nutshell. Standing then, alright? So when we say status, standing and capacity, here comes the standing. What is your standing at law is what it means. You're lawful, not in law, not in court, at law. What is your standing? What right do you, how do you present, in what standing your right to be there? How are you there? Are you the defendant? Are you the claimant? These kind of areas. We are a party. We are here today. Settlor, grantor, testator, principal, executor,
beneficiary, trustee, defendant, claimant, plaintiff. You get me? Standing. Your capacity. Now, does man... Yeah, we've gone public and private. We've given you which position to play. Now we need to know what's your capacity. Are you going to be private man? Or are you going to be a derivative of a legal person? Does man have the ability to be charged? Indeed. Yes or no? Does a person have the ability to be charged, fined, feed, forfeits? Can man be recognised in a court? You see, so where we put down the barriers, your phone rings and they say, hello there, is that David? Hello David, this is John from such and such. Can I talk to you? Hello, whoa, hello John, I might not be David. Where is John from and what does John want? Oh, okay, sorry David, I haven't agreed to being David, but you're going to assume I'm David. Crack on. Yes, can I take your date of birth please? Who are you John and where are you from? I've asked you for the third time. I'm about to put down the phone. I do not require unsolicited commercial calls. That's how we go. It's just as simple. So your status, standing and capacity can also be done on the telephone with unwanted, unsolicited telemarketing, civil kind of, calls there. A withheld number, calls on the handset, never answer it. It will always be bad unless it's somebody that you know that's been ringing around and you've withheld your number on purpose and you forgot, and then you need to realise that no one's answering you because if you answer them, which is your choice, then be very careful. We're doing digital online media security online with 2021 it will be, but we'll teach you about media safety, online digital tricks there. So do not get man wrong. Theft, trespass, deception and fraud is happening every day to everyone that's outside the inner circle. We see the Law Society calls this torts of law, torture, self-inflicted by ignorance to the facts of the matters at hand. There are more additional information required to use a trust effectively, discharge any and all liabilities, charges and claims, ergo the sovereign implementation of the instrumentation. Down on the streets, man calls it murder, not manslaughter. Here we are with the material evidence for the proof of the claims made herein, legally known as substance, a substance over the form. We present stone cold hard evidence for our claims, not substance, exhibits and proofs. Signatures may lead woman into a courtroom at some point. Now, necessarily civil, not criminal, business-wise, under the aegis of the court system, such as for affairs including but not limited to marriage, birth, death, registration of land, argumentation, and many, many more non-criminal or controversial reasons. So it pays all to take note and to get this circulating around on tongues, and to look out for our publications and review, share, critique, and help us to help you. We trust that man now understands the distinction between the signature and the autograph. You better do. We see that there is a colour of law run by London's Knights Templar Bar Society. Remember at the beginning of the video, the bar, and yes, the spirits, Black's Law, Halsbury's Law, God's laws and commandments. There are only two commandments that I can find and locate in the Bible. One is go forth and multiply, populate. And one is lest ye be deceived. In the end time there will be mass deception. Do not be deceived from the fake saviour. Courts only recognise persons and fictions, okay? Fact. No man is going to fare well in business in these domains. Search personage and barratry. It is a lawless venue, a due process, not a de jure process. Civil claims and charges are made sometimes into hybrid cases that can end up in a criminal charge being ultimately applied. My battery is running low. Uno momento. Why is that? Because we need to charge this. And the phone's on it as well. Bosh. Yes, lawless due process charges, yes. Civil going into criminal, and ultimately custodial sentences being handed out with forced non-consented imprisonment give out to man as punishment. Look at the TV licensing. The British government, the UK policymakers, the home officers and secretaries and generals and the militia, they're going to say that if you're over a certain age and you're watching the one-eyed god there, the box, and you don't have a license for it, it's a criminal offence. No, it isn't. Oh, Grandad, no, Grandma is going to go and face charges for that, and if they do, we will not be standing for it. So we'll put that into play, into your mind now. The sheriffs of Nottingham, the digital Robin Hoods of the quantum alpha and omegas are on the horizon. It's parabullshizing, coined right now and here. After what we've expressly tried to bring to you, do you now see why we are self-governing and not part of this cult warship or worship? I self-law am master. You must consider or look at SPLS Pro's Sovereign Masters Guild, the Foundation Key Competence documents and accompanying publications. We have given you all for free, and they are being shared, uploaded, and we're getting a lot of good praise and not so much grumble. If you want to amend and alter them and add to them and expand, they are continuously being improved. And much like this document here that hasn't been released, it's just been done Thursday and Friday, total of 36 hours. The same with this, the continuous improvement. The judges in the court are acting therefore as a banker on a bench, and they are referees. If and when you sign any papers into a court or at court, that's when the judge crown get paid out of the CQV trust attached with one's birth certificate. That's where the Crown Corporation, the clerk, etc. get the money. They are trading bonds and securities and using names in commerce without permissions and consent. But when you say it's fraud, well, if it's their name and it's their property and it's their crown copyright, you're the holder in due course with a trustee attachment, which then renders you only legally, not possessory title with the property and a different title. Then you understand and see that it no longer becomes fraud, and in the intricacies and inner workings of their system and our understanding, it's not cricket, it's not right, but we will help you get to the places where we are, and then we can all have a chat and articulate this. So that's how they get paid on that charging ways and certificates. That's where the Crown get the money, and that's where the fines, fees, prison charges, execution charges, death row, etc. We've got to think about the seriousness across the pond. It's all a racket played on a court. Set your game now. If you go to court, you will generally lose because it's not a court of law for man. You should or shouldn't sign is what we get asked a lot, and how you should sign or what you should sign. So we'll say signing with and without liability, and then you got an autograph for the private denoted by a thumb mark. Okay, so signing standard with liability, signing without liability, autograph, yes, private. What's that? Trying to cut me off. And then there's also, when we've used UCC, we've noticed there is a particular way of signing under UCC rules. You are not then responsible for anything that is on the paper and document. Under Uniform Commercial Codes, and you've heard us mention those before, the set of code that lawyers set up over 100 years ago in America, but it is not exclusive to America. The universal, if you can tell me that it is, then I'd like the evidence. The Uniform Commercial Code comes exclusively with all contract law. Much like equity governances arrive as soon as trust is in play, trust law. So when I say contract law, they're not true contracts, are they? As we know contracts. The public contract law, as we over King stand it, in real life, reality, constructed agreements is what they are, with agencies and commercial corporations. They're not real lawful contracts, but they're called contracts. It's called contract law, and this is where your tort comes in as well. We have proven this time and time again. It is a realm of trusts, agencies, agreements. Okay, so stay with me. Very little in the way of proper contract. We are not under any law, but under contract. The person, assumption, presumption. We, you are under what you want to be, but the persons, we. So let me just put that. So it's raw, it still needs the edit. Under the UCC, you do not have to sign. Okay, ears up, eyes down. A stamped signature or a typed up signature is considered signed under the UCC. You get a letter, in a notice in the mail, and there's no signature, just a stamped name or signature, then it's considered signed under UCC. Even to us, the captain's vessel boat is missing. The author hasn't put his ship on there. No wet ink, no reverse public vicarious liabilities. I know. So, what do you say to that? Can you tell me the UCC applicable section numbers that would reference this? I've given you quite a lot of clues. Some of you that are familiar, I'd like you to play the game. UCC is important for all of us to know. It's something like the canons and the UCC. For me, there's some things that I've left till last. Some things, quite a lot, when I looked at it. And I've done the groundwork first. And now I'm ready for going and getting the teeth sunk into. And when you will see on some of our pre-formatted informative posts and documents and notices that we're teaching to you for your consideration and not legal advice, see the disclaimers for that. You will see the reference of UCC and errors and emissions. Errors and emissions come from cargo, handling, freight, maritime, admiralty and code, where you will say this amount of stock manifest, product delivery has happened on a passenger flight manifest, cargo manifest, all the same, all to do with. See the pilot and his revelations about dead souls on the plane before he can take off. Anders' his brother from Sebastian, Swedish brother, not brother, but fellow pilot X. And so you have these areas of which the code, the contract, and the law is at play. And you will see the terminology and the meanings. Errors and emissions doesn't mean words and punctuality and grammar. It means that items, money, cargo, pallets and things like that might be adrift, and the errors and emissions are accepted. You find any pallets missing, let me know, and I'm happy to mark them down, is what it means. It fell off the back of the lorry. Where's my other pallet? He didn't notice. So I sold it John, and he didn't notice. I got paid for delivery, and I sold John a pallet from that delivery. When the other scenario is, excuse me, yes, where's my missing pallet? Oh, you've got a missing pallet. I sold it John, he says in his head. I don't know, I'll look into it. I'll get back to you. I tell you what, just knock it off the bill. Okay, thank you. Nice one, bye. Cha-ching. So that's what errors and emissions are. Not so much grammatical features when you get into it, which is why I don't use it as much. When you look at Uniform Commercial Code, you will see that it has many sections applicable to areas. And it seems that with the Maritime Admiralty and the overpinning of the Ecclesia, the UCC contract code system is in. Now, what's a courtroom, everybody? Is a courtroom law, or is it a non-disclosed contractual business of which they get you salvaged and do monetary actions and call it law? It's the secondary, and it's contract, and it's financial. So would UCC be prevalent in an English Anglo United Kingdom court? If it's to do with contract, I would argue boom shanker. Thank you all for this. It's asked for and come through in its droves. In America, the court systems are operated in UK and America. The court system are operated under military jurisdiction, as pointed out within hospitals, Surgeon General, and the academies and schools. Are they military? Can you spot any similarities? A bell rings, the students get up and run to the next area, bells ringing, alarm bells, a sit down, a register is taken, a registrar, okay, is in the registrar. Hello everyone, you got the teacher who's now the registrar general. I'll leave it there, and food for thought. I do not care which courtroom, if it is a higher courtroom or a lower courtroom or any higher or lower court, they're all classified by us as military. If you mention the common law, Magna Carta or the Constitution in any of these, what is it that the robe in black there that represents the dead father, what does he say? The judge says, not in my courtroom, doesn't he? You're not at the correct law level. Man does not speak legalese. Man is not in the law society. Man does not know idiot. Man does not consent. Now you know why we say that, and that is a nice bit of detail for you that we do, because our heart is at the core of this matter. We want you to king and queen overstand this foreign commercial process that the courts are doing to oneself on behalf of the person We respectfully decline the offer to contract. I am not a name. How can I be a name? Are you going to force man to proceed? Every time man steps into the dock of the court, we get seasick. The Law Society's lingo age is designed to confuse the hell out of man. It is designed under UCC, you see, and they know what they're doing and they know how to manipulate you. All judges are well versed, learned. See my post about learned and what it is to be learned and learned in this business and subsequent contract in the courtroom of the United Kingdom and across the Commonwealth and states. The majority of judges here in the United Kingdom are not judges. They're just doing administrative business. They might be a retired lawyer and now they're doing business as a judge. Judges all around the world, Australia, Canada, France, many of you. They all have the exact same system. They're all under the UCC, which was created 100 years ago in the Americas by lawyers. And it also stems from Londinium, London, Babylon, Temple, Knights, 1066, and then 1067 when the agreement was made. Expansion point needed, expansion pack going there. The president appoints all the federal judges in America, allegedly, and they travel to a place called Scottsdale, America. Can I have some information on this, please? Across the pond, Arizona, and Reno, Nevada. They apparently train there and learn how to apply this deceptive, non-disclosed business practice of the devil's arts. All right. 43 of 61, and I need to get out and go to the loo. We're going to take a little temporary break, you'll be pleased to know. I'm going to be back in 1 minute, literally, okay? There we go. We all forget that's life. It's too busy, too much going on. Bless. Let's go. Thank you for the interlude. So we're going to go and look at the driver vehicle licensing agency now and the driver motor vehicle agency registrations and registered keepers. We'd like you to look at the word allodial, free, not holden of any lord or superior, owned without obligation of vassalage or fealty, the opposite of feudal, Barker versus Dayton, Wallace versus Harmstead. Let man express thus to ye, the fact that title to one's private property is again given away to our government agency, okay? The title to one's private property is given away. I have left the iron horse issue to latter, as man's flesh and blood is a far greater and serious issue compared to metal and rubber, asset and a block there. I know it's important, and some may live in their van, horsey, carriage, pleasure craft, etc. So let's look at it from the top. After one has voluntarily, again here we go, volunteered and submitted the vehicle registration forms in England, Anglo United Kingdom, Victor 5, okay, V5, signed with full public liability and no retainment of rights or even asking for full disclosure prior to completing this transaction, is it mandatory? And transfer of property titles to these agencies, respectively, Crown agencies, DVLA and DMV. The DVLA now holds set law title to Iron Horse property, pleasurecraft, the car, the DVLA that is. You are no longer the allodial or title or have equitable title, neither do you now hold that equitable title to the property. Ye are not even a beneficiary. Ye are simply the registered keeper, legal trustee in office. Now, if man, one, ye, would like to research the implied meaning and definition of registered keeper, keepers and registration, registered keepers are the legal persons whom are responsible for taking care of this vehicle, property, previous asset. And they pay all the taxes for the license, they pay the insurance, they take care of it, any and all public damages. The DVLA, DMV can take possession of the Iron Horse anytime, impound, again with the dog talk, I know, in the pound, impound, dog pound. Once the private property has been registered, you have transferred, handed title and ownership over to the Crown Corporative State through that Crown-owned agency. Transfer via endorsement of the equitable asset, aka application of thy signature for the person on behalf of. The equitable instrument is the certificate of birth, alright? Oh, sorry, birth certificate, that's my dyslexia. The equitable instrument, I've gone for it's your second document. Let's get it right. That's why we're having a proofread, everyone, so we get it right. Word perfect, verbatim right. The equitable instrument is the birth certificate, number 2 document. Once man buys a vehicle, pleasurecraft, Iron Horse, we are invited to defraud ourselves by handing it over to the Crown of the State unwittingly via this transfer of said titles. DVLA, DMV are Crown corporations. They are private corpses run and owned by the corporate city of London, Crown State. And I'd argue they make hundreds of millions, HMRC, DVLA, DMV, DWP, etc. The only legal reason man is required to have a licence would be, if we look at the Road Traffic Management Act of, I think, 88, if when you drive, not travelling, driving, it is a vehicle we're talking about and in public commercial use as opposed to private property and travelling non-commercially. So that's a summarisation of what and why they, in a legal realm, consider state standing capacities of the capacity of you. Now we're public, now we're private. We're driving, we're travelling, we're public, we're private, we're commercial, we're non-commercial, you see. An example is, if you are operating a taxi service, then you're operating as an employee, a driver, an agent, in commerce, for business, commercial use, and the regulatory governance along with that. If woman is travelling in a non-commercial and private capacity, such as leisure, pleasure, travelling, going to work, going to the market, perhaps to take your family away on a break, holiday, or as you say, a vacation. All right. Exercising your right to travel freely and unhindered. Vacation, what's the other one now? There's another one that I should put there that's it's annoying me. Just wait a minute. What do you do? Recreation. Recreate it is recreation. Oh, recreational. It's not that's an American type English language, but the one that I'd like to use is I'm aware of a creational break then. Holiday, vacation, or recreational, creational. Exercising your right to travel freely and unhindered. Natural flesh and blood womb man does not require any legal licensing. I'd invite you to show me and prove it if you think they do. You can move about the surface of the earth unmolested in the pursuit of happiness and discoveries. There is actually no law. When I say unmolested, you may think, what? Are you sure, Dave? Listen up. There is actually no law that requires man to hold a license. Man may move around the surface of terra firma, the earth, heart, unmolested, unhindered. These agencies, with the agents, officers and state troopers, as fictions dressed up in a costume such as an actor, all right, equipped with weapons such as taser, telescopic batons, spray, pepper spray, firearms in some countries, they have been given a license by the government to stop, to arrest, apprehend, arbitrarily, arrest, stop and search man, terrorise man, pull and drag man out of man's property and vehicle. So the road traffic officers, troopers, on most occasions declare the emergency themselves, don't they? They sound the emergency sirens and they activate the blue flashing red and blue lights, them colours again. Then they pull man over for a civil traffic infraction, all right? Regarding any kind of Road Traffic Management Act or penal code for the Commonwealth countries, this action in itself holds some morality and authoritative issues according to their own regulatory statutory codes regarding whom and how an emergency crime offence can be raised and executed. Okay, so if they declare an emergency themselves, that is so, it does happen, but normally there is a reporting process and it comes through the radio where they need to go and attend. But when they start manufacturing jobs up themselves, there's a little bit of okay then, well, we require the proof. If some little old lady has seen a fracas in the street and somebody, a passerby, has come by to try and break it up and somebody's being robbed and the lady across there has reported what's happening and the police arrive and there's 3 here in the fracas scuffle, it can be explained to them they've been called to assist in common law harm, injury and loss, parameters there. Whereas the other way, pulling somebody over, declaring the siren and the lights and stopping and then insisting, then that's where we have to then manage the business and the claim correctly. Like an example would be, and it's not in this document, which is why we're here doing this, because on the replay I will extend this with your comments, what I've said, and furthermore thoughts. It could be said, I'll just I'll leave that for now. We'll move on. I'm not going to give it out now. I'll let you wait for the update. But I've got a lot to put on there about how this soundy alarm has gone off. So there needs to be a victim for there to be a crime. All right. We've got auditors and administrators out there at the minute, I'm afraid. Crown collection. I'll leave it there. So if common law breaches and victims usually raise the alarm and make a claim, and not the ones paid to protect and serve, all right? Enough said, fam. Who gave the agencies, the officers, troopers, the right to stop and apprehend people going about their God-given business? The corporations that they are registered and licensed to, so that would be the authority, the ones that write the code and the books, the authors, the authority. The police generally are not constables. The Queen has taken an oath to represent the sovereign, sovereign people, mans. Queen Elizabeth is not doing the representation anymore, it appears. If you are Elizabeth, Flair, QE2, we've got an issue. Please can I come and sit with you and help you sort this out, because it's got past a point of no return. So Queen Elizabeth II, QE2, that's a corporation in itself, all right? We have Elizabeth, lady, woman, flesh and blood, natural, Elizabeth, of family, Batten, Windsor, Mount, etc. So the police are a federation of rank and file officers. They seemingly now in 2020 are under the public, technocratic, corporate control and direction. Corporations influence the government and government influence the corporations, an eternal loop of doom. We have seen the following in our discoveries. If man calls a police constable or a keeper of the peace, and you've got somebody at the door, and it's a civil issue, and it's to do with debt, TV licence or something like that, debt collection agency, agent, bailiff is on the property and at the door, they will say they're unable to attend usually in Britain as it's a civil matter. If the agent, debt collector calls the police agents officers usually will attend. I'll leave it there. And I do believe officers have got a duty and a protection and an oath and a protection, yes. Constables, Pelian police code that we've mentioned. So they are not supposed to aid and assist the collection, are they? So that's your constitutional argument that you get from lawful dissent, and and they're in a position, there's no victim and there's no consent. Grant Shapps, a month ago, BBC Radio 4, we're not a police state, referring to the recent lockdown measures and implementations they put on there and justifying that. Policed and governed by consent, okay? It's a very key part there, the bits that's getting edged out as we speak. So now we're in the presence of a rank and file Federation officer or state trooper of the Crown State, London, Washington, DC, Vatican, Australia, Queensland. Yeah, you know whose side they're on. You can be more diligent with your business now, we hope. That proves to us that the police are not working for man's protection, and they do not necessarily stop trespass, theft, harm and injury unless we compel them to do so under the duty of care, common law, as a trustee, constable and keeper of the peace. I, David, and SPLSPro.com have successfully taken control of some of these types of situations, and we have regained lawful control. We have noticed officers and agents. We have various castle defender notices and packs that will remove the implied rights of access to property and easements. Informed via the doctrine of notices, that which lies at the heart of equity, all visitors to the property are seen strictly by appointment only. You can write that down yourself and make a sign. Trespass and harm will occur if these simple rules and laws are not followed. Private property, trespass. So SPL's Pro used the legal and lawful laws to repel and dispel these tyrants of the Crown. They are simply auditors and administrators. They're not crime prevention constables, sheriffs and the like. For shame. So the only exception to this policy and lawful preferencing is if the visitors do indeed have permission from you, an appointment in advance, or lawful reason to be attending the property to conduct business or investigate a crime. There could be an emergency in the area, somebody needs to get to you and give you an emergency warning. It could be quite a few valid reasons. You can have doorstep canvasser and visitor. Usually it's to do with business, not to investigate a crime, okay? With previous permissions via notices and laws would be acceptable for the entrance onto the private property. The UK and various other governments are conducting cruel and unusual punishments against the original Britons and international mans on an international stage and community. Who's heard of cruel and unusual punishments before? I'll be very interested if you have. And if you have heard of that, what, why, where and when did you hear of that? Publication, book, time, author, thought leader, scholar, etc. As much as you could give to me about cruel and unusual punishments. In 1933 there was an interesting paper written. It is called and entitled Technocracy. The powers vested into these corporations is via public common laws, statutory and not lawful. The only time a policeman officer can intervene is if common laws have been broken and if there is a victim of a crime. The same as man is able to intervene and stop a common law crime taking place and before a common law arrest. I wouldn't say it would be a citizen's arrest, but a common law interface that needs rewording, but an arrest to stop a common law interface because if one is able to do, you should do, it's your duty and obligation under the common law, the trust, self-governing and self-protecting. We are morally obligated to uphold the public trust and keep the peace. Simply as, think of the 10 Commandments. We trust you'll go out there and not go and turn into a loon and do things that you shouldn't, you know. Woman is self-governing, and the UK and its citizens are governed by consent, dissent. We are not a police state. This is a key area to pin and remember for your key competence. During man's indoctrination education, we have not been privy to the private, higher, inner, financial and legal, lawful apparatus of the state and country. We see that the educational state system allows religious education and it allows some forms of higher maths. Man is not legally trained, no. Man is not compliant in monetary mechanics, not at all. Contract law, not at all. Uniform commercial code, you wish. That allows lawyers to trade souls via birth certificates, and man's ignorance of the Roman secular codified rules and laws, not to mention Admiralty, Maritime and Ecclesia. Search criminal offence, please, because it's either criminal or it's an offence. Criminal is crime, offence, rule. Criminal, most likely be private, equitable loss, harm, injury, common law murder, etc. Worst case scenario. An offence, Road Traffic Management Act, secular public, Westminster, person, public, against the public secular code. One is law, I think you've got that, and one is a rule break, okay? One is against man, one is against man's person. The rule of law also fits into here, to be added into version 2. I've given you a lot on that, and we brought you how the rule of law and the force of law and the officers and the international and the governance of and the ministers and the ones in Westminster, the Prime Minister and his cabinet and the agents and the generals and the secretaries are all under this law. International force and rule, okay? Fact. So no victim, there's no crime. Claimants make a claim, they provide the burden of proof. They're different to victims. You claim, you know, and then you got no crime. It may be an offence that the claimant is claiming upon, but we conditionally accept, and we brought you how to manage all of that. No keeping of the peace. It's a problem reaction, and selling a solution is what we've got. And penalise women, like now, masks, fines, fees, forfeits, loss of benefits, loss of employment. If they do not accept the contract or the solution, they penalise man, which is where the fines come in. So we have a problem, we've got a reaction, we've got a solution. Bish bash bosh. Not necessarily honourable. Woman has not been made aware of these public commercial codes and subsequent penalties, penal codes, and so we are ignorant, or have been ignorant, of the system, especially of the Uniform Commercial Code and these adhesion agreements, which are then referred to as contracts or contract law, which is tort law, and that's to be added here in version 2 as well. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Page 47 of 61, and we're on 2 hours and 22 minutes. You can lead a human to knowledge, but you can't make it think. That's got a picture of a horse there. From Kev. As for the officers, I, David, believe a great many of them know exactly what they're doing, or suspect, at least, that they may not be acting conscionably. It's hard to, sorry. When the UK Prime Minister announces that they're going to give X amount of £100 billion to the common market, where do you think those funds for the transfer originate from? The Bank of England and loans, the budget, the government funds and pots, NI, SSN? No, the Treasury accounts that have been set up as previously mentioned. It's drawn from man's funds, derived from man's, like the benefits, and when they sanction you and they pay in your benefits as an agent from an agency, dipping into a pot that you created and originated as a principle. So these accounts and the government, they're taking it from the Foundation Identity Document Trusts, you know, what originated from that. You're worth your weight in gold. Let's take a break from all that heavy law comparison, and let's read the story that I found during my discovery entitled Mr. Jones' Cotton Plantation. Mr. Jones owned a cotton plantation and many slaves. One day he was talking to the owner of the plantation next to his. Mr. Jones was lamenting, a bit like Boris when he came out with lamenting. We will lament. Well, Mr. Jones was lamenting the fact that times were tough. He was having to work his slaves harder than ever, and was having trouble with some of them being disobedient or trying to run away. The other plantation owner said he knew someone who could help. Day 1. Dear 1, the Jones Plantation. One day, Mr. Jones was talking to the owner. One day, Mr. Jones called his slaves together so a man named Mr. Smith could talk to them. Before beginning, Mr. Smith whispered to Mr. Jones, "Whatever I say, do not contradict me or interfere, and I promise you, your slave troubles will be over." "My name is Mr. Smith," he said to the slaves, "and this may be the happiest day of your lives. From today forward, you will no longer be slaves, but you all be free men." Mr. Jones was so shocked, he started to step forward, but Mr. Smith gestured for him to remain silent. He did only because the other plantation owner had spoken so highly of Mr. Smith's skills. "You are no longer property of Mr. Jones," Mr. Smith continued. You are free. No more would you be forced to labour for the benefit of Mr. Jones. Now you can work for yourselves." Now the slaves were all murmuring and looking at each other. Many were smiling, many were looking puzzled. "In fact, you are now free to leave this plantation wherever you want," Mr. Smith said. "However, since we are surrounded by other plantations, if you leave, it's highly likely that some other plantation owner will scoop you and claim you as his own the moment you set foot on his property, 12 years a slave. So I urge you not to risk your newfound freedom by doing something so foolish. Instead, may I suggest that you stay here, no longer as slaves, but as willing participants and as part owners of this plantation. This is your new plantation." Mr. Jones bit his tongue to keep from objecting. Kind of pose, I imagine. "For now, we might as well leave Mr. Jones in charge," said Mr. Smith. "Since he is the only one with any experience of running a plantation, which is quite a complicated thing to manage. He will no longer be your master, but just another manager on the plantation. In fact, he will now be using his organisation and management skills to serve you. Whatever problems you may have had with him before, you are now all equals and you need each other to make this work. If we all cooperate together and work together, we could reap the benefits together. In honour of this happy occasion, I present to you this new symbol of togetherness. In cooperation, this flag, which will be the emblem of the new Free Jones Plantation." He held up this new flag, with most of those listening were still too amazed to respond. A flag, eh? Moving on. "This will be our motto," Mr. Smith announced. "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit. Pledging allegiance to the Jones Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty and justice for all. To celebrate, everybody can have the rest of the day off. Enjoy your freedom. Do as you please and be back here tomorrow bright and early so that we may begin work on this great new and noble endeavour as equal free men." Finally convinced that Mr. Smith was serious, the former slaves applauded and cheered. Day 2. "We all want this plantation to do well," Mr. Smith said at the beginning of the next meeting, "so we could all share the benefits. We all know that this takes a lot of effort to make a cotton plantation work. Just because you're all free doesn't mean you can stop working. In fact, since you're now working for yourselves, we expect you to work even harder than ever before, but now with pride and joy, knowing that you're working for yourself. Of course, there still have to be rules. Everyone just does whatever they want. The plantation won't produce anything. This experiment will fail and all will starve. Pardon me. You should be thankful that Mr. Jones agreed to stay on to lend his knowledge and skills to this endeavour, and I trust that you will all do your own part to make this work. Several of you have been chosen to access project supervisors to manage different aspects of the operation, to make sure everyone is doing his assigned job, to make sure the rules are followed, and so on. The rest of you may head out to the fields to start your first day of work as free men." Day 3. The next morning, Mr. Smith had a grim expression on his face as the daily meeting began. "I have an unpleasant duty to do today," he said. "Yesterday, Charles was caught keeping some of the cotton that he picked, presumably for the sale for his own personal profit. That is against the rules. That is theft. For that, Charles must be punished. Two men tied Charles to the whipping post. I take no joy in this, Mr. Smith continued, but you must all understand, if we do not maintain order, if we do not have rules that we all abide by, then the plantation will fail and we will all suffer. Suffer is to continue to allow the whip cracked against Charles's back. If we all pitch in for the common good, then we can all prosper. Being free does not mean you should be selfish and greedy. We must do our assigned duties and obey the rules, and then we could all benefit. And each of you will receive the appropriate share of profits. A young man named Samuel stepped forward. He said, "But if you and Mr. Jones decide the rules and whip us if we disobey, how is that any different from what we had before?" "How can you say that?" Mr. Smith asked. A moment of, "I'm shocked. You were a slave before, and now you're free. Things still need to be managed and organised by those best qualified to do so." "Do you know how to run a plantation, Samuel?" "Well, no," he answered. "But if we're free, why do we get no say in what the rules are and how things work?" I'm surprised at your ingratitude," Mr. Smith answered. "None of you know how our plantation is run, so you're in no position to be making decisions about how things are done here. You don't seem to appreciate all the things Mr. Jones provides for you, from protecting you from all the outside threats you know nothing about, those that would come here capturing and enslaving you. If not for Mr. Jones' protection to make sure you have all food and housing, tools to work with, you're cared for when sick and injured and so on, there wouldn't be a plantation at all. No cotton to pick, no land to plant and harvest if not for him. You should be grateful that he's made it possible. The level of comfort you now have, your lives would be far worse if not for him. Nevertheless, as free and equal participants in this endeavour, from now on each morning, any worker may have 2 minutes to ask questions or voice suggestions or your complaints." With that, the workers all seemed satisfied, headed down to the fields to pick the cotton again. Day 4 on Mr. Jones's plantation, man. "I have a big announcement," Mr. Smith said as the daily meeting began. "Mr. Jones's cousin is here, and not just to visit and see how our project is coming along. It has been decided that from now on you will be deciding who manages the plantation. Of course, this job can't be done by just anybody, but every 3 months we will have a special meeting at which all the workers will vote on whether they think Mr. Jones should run the plantation or they think his cousin, Mr. Johnson, should run the plantation." I haven't changed that, it does say Mr. Johnson. I'm sorry if a bumbling idiot comes to mind now when I say Mr. Johnson, but there is Mr. Jones and there is Mr. Johnson, and this is original format as I came across such publication that I didn't write, that I thought quite applicable to the end of this 61-page, thousands of words document. You didn't need it, but like Hitchens says, I'll continue on anyway. I'm not saying he's perfect, but some of that man's sayings have inspired me, his mannerisms and so on. If you don't like the way things are being managed, you now have the power to change it. Amazed and pleased, the workers headed out to the fields to pick the cotton. Days passed, months passed, a year passed, don't look at my tooth, and the plantation continued to operate as before. Sometimes Mr. Jones was in charge, sometimes the idiot Johnson was in charge. Sorry, I couldn't resist it, but the day-to-day routine stayed exactly the same. The workers worked hard and long hours every day and still had very little to show for it. Every day the meeting would begin with them all reciting the Jones Plantation motto. We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Joneses Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty and justice for all. Liberty is for sailors. Who said that? It was me. To the cracking. One day Mr. Smith announced Samuel has asked to say a few words this morning, and whatever the rest of us may think of his ideas and opinions, we're all free here, and that means we're allowed to speak our minds. So Samuel, you have 2 minutes to begin. Samuel stepped forward, looking a bit sheepish and scared, a bit lammy. I was excited when all this started, said Samuel. He began glancingly nervously at Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. But you don't see what's happened here. Nothing has really changed. We're all still slaves. There was grumbles of disagreement from the crowd. They tell us what to do and they whip us if we don't do it. They still make all the rules and they punish us if we disobey. They let us make suggestions and complain about things, but that never really ever changes anything. They let us choose between Mr. Jones and the idiot Johnson, but what's the difference? The situation will stay the same. We do all of the work and they take as much as they want and decide how much they'll let us keep in turn. They live in luxury, made rich by the cotton we pick via our sweat equity. We do all the work. We have to build our own huts, grow our own food and take care of ourselves. They leave us just enough that we don't revolt or run away. This is not freedom. We're all still slaves. They've only changed the words they use, but nothing else has changed. What version of Black's Law Dictionary are we on at present? Question mark, new line. I think you will find it is edition number 10. I proved my point. Case in point. He say we're all free and we're all equal, but we're not. They command and we obey. That's not freedom. That's not equality. They say we're all free to leave, but all that means is we're free to be someone else's slave. Samuel, he's a very sharp mind here, isn't he? Why should we work or obey the rules? We didn't agree to this. They made the system. They forced it onto us. They control and rob us and call it freedom. They've deceived us and you into thinking that being able to choose which slave master you'll work for is the same as being free. It is not. Open your mince eyes. If you keep what you produce, they'll call it theft. When they take what you produce, they call it sharing and fair distribution. Partnership. Can't you see that this is, I can't say that word, it's a naughty one and it's a family daytime, not made for children, so we just say, mums and dads, if you'd like to be aware, I'm going to say that word. Can't you see that this is, no I won't, FCUKERI, plain and simple, FCUKERY. Your time is up, Samuel, Mr. Smith announced calmly. At his gesture, two supervisors grabbed Samuel by the arms and led him down to the whipping post. I'm sorry, Samuel, but you broke the rules. There are rules against encouraging others not to work and encouraging others to break the rules. You're only hurting all of us with your discontentment, in your complaining, in your disobedience. The whip fell and Samuel let out a grunt. Without rules, without order, all would be lost. And without the law, there would be chaos. Really indeed. Have you heard that before? We cannot behave as wild animals, each doing whatever he pleases. Samuel wasn't behaving as a wild animal, and he wasn't doing as he pleased. He pointed out the infallibility within this new miracle system, which wasn't quite a miracle. It was wolf in sheep's clothing to some extent. We must follow the plan. Not the plan. Sorry, I realise what I've just said there, but we must follow the plan and all do our duty for betterment of everyone. Which plan exactly? Those who do not must be punished. The whip fell again and blood flowed freely from Samuel's back. Samuel, it is you who is stealing from the others. When you don't do your assigned work, you are making more work for others. When you disobey the rules, it is you who are endangering the future of everyone else here. You are the thief, you are the criminal, you are the one trying to destroy the arrangement that keeps us all safe and prosperous. Now we're in the courtroom with a judge, look, shh. At every lash of the whip, the other workers cheered louder and louder, some yelling curses at Samuel, you know what I mean, changed and flipped the script on him, ostracised him, being spoiled and selfish. You complain about everything, talking as if you were oppressed, but you are the one ruining things. You are the one from keeping us from being all that we could be, Samuel. It is your greed, your rebelliousness that is hurting all of us. They all play by the rules, Mr. Smith said, gesturing at the others over yonder. What makes you think that you don't have to? Boy, sorry, but that's just getting into character now. Do you think you're above the law? There were loud yells of agreement as the whip fell and cracked again on Samuel's back. Ugh. We must remain and maintain order, Mr. Smith proclaimed. To make this plantation great, to make it so that we could all be happy and prosperous, to have the society we want, there has to be rules. We all have to contribute to our fair share to this great endeavour. We cannot tolerate actions and attitudes that seek to undermine the amazing things that together, as free men, we have achieved and will continue to achieve. Mr. Jones was smiling as he gave Mr. Smith a great big pat on the back. The crowd was cheering so loudly, none of them had noticed that Samuel had passed away and died. What man may have been taught about government and politics is no more accurate or reasonable than what Mr. Smith taught them slaves right there in that story. What man, compromises there is what you take from that. I don't tell you anything. I like your minds. I like you to think and you to tell me what you think. Did you notice our notices? If you're ready to look through the veil of rhetoric and the propaganda to see the reality beneath, get a copy of The Most Dangerous Superstition, because that's what this has been taken from, I believe, a publication called The Most Dangerous Superstition. I don't have the reference to the author. I'm giving you as much as I can there. It will change the way you see the world. I have not got a copy of The Most Dangerous Superstition, neither has the .com or anywhere, so work in progress. For the final chapter of this publication, page 53 of 61, 2 hours and 40 minutes in the game. I said it was big, and this is just a wee little scratch, all right? Just a 3 hour, 13,717 words, 61 page chat and scratch, all right? There was no legal advice, there was no telling you of anything, there are no orders, you're not in the army. This is our church, and this is where we heal our hurt. Welcome to Indy. For the final chapter of this publication, let us now take a look at legal human sacrifice, the death penalty, aka capital punishment, which is what Samuel just got there. I've kind of loosely, I hope you appreciate this, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, slavery, realm-wide, internationally. Let's have a look at all lives, let's have a look at all slaves. Let's stop pigeonholing and doing the bits and bobs. Let's join together, let's share the knowledge and get ready to be non-violent but making waves, all right? Capital punishment, this is going to be sketchy. If you are easily offended, I'm going to recite some horrible truths now. You would move away from the offspring, you would turn it down, you would be putting in headphones. Now, legal, lawful, disclaimer, this last section is grim. If you are squeamish, if you don't like talk of death, and you don't like man being murdered, I'd be very cautious about how you approach this section. I will say it with love and respect and honour, but I want you to be aware, replayers, ones on the live, offspring about, I'd prefer it if you turned it down and you didn't let them hear this section. Not that they would be, but if there's a chance they can, you've been warned. The first thing here are crimes the first thing is there are crimes that some say the proper and only penalty considered is death. I've read a lot about serial killers, and so did my mum Julia, and one of her topics that she lectured was criminology. She was experienced in criminology, and I asked what that was, and she explained to me and showed me some books. I've looked at a lot of horrific, brutal material, as has others, but I'm just the one on the video, so I need to tell you, I've been extremely interested in criminology, like my mum, and antisocial behaviour, as well as political pathology. That's right, I said political pathology. What's that? Who are they? Exactly, get ready. There have been some truly evil men in the realm. I'm not going to mention them all, but one that I never heard of before was John Wayne Gacy. Who was John Wayne Gacy? March the 17th, 1942 to May the 10th, 1994. He was an American serial killer, one of the many American serial killers, and a sex offender known as the Killer Clown, who assaulted and murdered at least 33 young men and boys. Gacy regularly performed at children's hospitals and charitable events as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown. These were personas that he had devised. I think he begged the judge. It is written, I do think, because I wasn't there and I don't know anything about it. From this report, I am in archives, I think that it is said that that man begged the judge for the death penalty. In fact, there is no way I can see of man ever coming back from where he went. That's not the issue right now, and for me, the issue for this topic and this publication is, do we, man, give the state that much power? Yay or nay? Let's go in. I would say practically, resoundingly, no. I think this is a very callous way. I think in the United Kingdom, it has been outlawed since, and we're going to get into that, about 1800s and 60. But in the United States, they have death row, and they have the penal code system there, which has got capital punishment and human sacrifice. And it looks like it costs roughly $20 million to put each soul to death. So when we say prisons are for profit, all right, you can't just put someone to death for $10. But when we say there's a profit there from certain things, you would never imagine a profit being available to be made, are roughly 20 million. And it's good that they don't just put them straight to death on a $10 budget. I'm not saying they should, but what I'm saying is if they're going to do it, they should spend a considerable amount of resources and time and investigations and make sure they've got the right man for one. How they do that, what methodology and the machinery. So just bear that in mind. The UK has not had anyone in the Tower of London, all right, or put to death via capital punishment in some years. I do believe the last sacrifice, that can't be a guinea pig, Trump, but I think it is. That's incredible. Tiny little thing make that much smell. Wow. That's the first time in 2 years I've ever smelled. Are you okay, Squeaky? She's moving. It's all right. Wow. Capital punishment. I think the last sacrifice was 1860 approximately. Do not quote me on that. Good Lord. C version 2.0. That's going to be added into here. If you ever... I'm sorry, that was really off topic and quite... Good Lord, I can take things, and I've seen some stuff, but I've not smelled anything like that. I'm a tiny little fairy. The state then shouldn't just be able to commit death that easily. They make mistakes in America. Now we're talking, as death row is there, a lot of mistakes. Man, whoa man, you have to get your theory about this right. Are there crimes that warrant death? Yes or no? I'm kind of borderline on this. I'm ultimately now, with what I've learned, onto the no side. But previously, up until Christopher Hitchens and 2 months ago, I was all on the yes, violent rape and murder, etc. Eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But as we've progressed and expanded, and there were others out there that won't agree, and that's fine. That's why we're here. That's why I've put this in. That's why we're going to talk about it. This is, violent rape and murder might be one of those. There are certainly crimes that go beyond that. I mean, if you do have a daughter, a son, a mother, someone you love who is raped violently and you're not homicidally enraged by that, then I believe there may be something wrong with you, because that's how all initially bad things get taken, negative news, and the way that you want to protect your family. We are a tribe. We're not legal. We're not London, Temple, BAR. We're not admiralties. We're not ministers as such in the cloth. We're not clergy. We're not administrators. We're not, so we're kind of tribal and natural positive. And back then, Mel Gibson's Apocalypto style, enough said. So we're moving on. There is something wrong with you in that way. It's up to the state to take the burden off, man, okay? If we're going to look at this in such a way, with a sufficient penalty, and maybe a penalty, that should be death. I'm on the fence, but I'm open to interpretation. I want to hear what you say. Then there's the state. Who is the monster here? The criminal or the state? When the criminal is for sure, that's definite, certain, but the state, well... You just never maybe want the state to have that much power. I think that might be a reasonable argument. Man in the UK is not comfortable with the state having that power and the death penalty. Some things are, though, so evil and perverted and horrible, there is absolutely no doubt about it that some of you will want that applied, and I may, in moments of rage and anger. But there are ones out there that forgive. I don't know how they do it. Perhaps we need to talk to them and expand upon that. But there are ones, an example would be BBC Radio 4, Travelling in the Iron Horse. They're promoting a book called The Punch. Fracas, friend sees his friend being squared by another man in a pub. This friend goes across, hits somebody, drops them down, they're now dead. One punch. It's called The Punch. The parents of that dead, deceased, innocent man, their asset son, have now got in touch with the one who threw that punch, and they're helping him build his life. Boom. The power of love, not the love of power. So we continue on. And that's not the only ones. I'd like furthermore to come. So I think these are all reasonable arguments. Man in the UK is not comfortable with the state. Clearly, we're not comfortable with the state. The state having that much power would be really reason to escape and to find warmer shores. Some things are so evil and perverted and horrible, there's absolutely no doubt about it. We need to look at penalties. I believe I can underline at least some of the reasons why this battle is so far from seeming marginal or humanitarian. It is very important, it is essential, in fact, for those of us on this side of the house of the argument who have devoted their politics to the fight for a classless society and against the hereditary apparatus of absolutism. We frankly, unalterably oppose the practice of human sacrifice, majority of us, and we even have our doubts about the system that requires it. Peace and love is what you say, yeah? So now I've asked you a controversial question. I want you to be honest about that, please, and that's how we get places. Let me explain a little about what we mean by that. Every one of you now will have read the recent human sacrifices that may have took place around the world. I'm going to give you, this is where I said about the little ones and moving them and the headphones and turning it down. This is your warning again. I'm going to talk about some historical conceptualizations in Florida. Actually turned rather disagreeably in the eyes and viewpoints and view of some liberal commentators into an emulation that it was unpleasant, okay? So that's where I'm going to lead you there. There was, in fact, the stench of burning flesh, repulsive to the nose. There was the flash of flame behind the mask, appalling to the eye. And I came out with that at the beginning. It did have a point to it as well. It wasn't just for play and, stay frosty, Ace McCloud style, eh? So Mr. Medina's last few seconds can't be measured exactly, but they don't seem to be very civilised as a last means of, or as a means of accessing society. I'm a bit uncomfortable reading this, so I'll just calm down. The flames, we understand. I would say more or less routine, we would say, judging from these executions and the way they do this in America. The Green Mile, not putting the water under the sponge. Thanks for that, Kev. The flames, understand, we would say, are more or less routine. We don't want to dwell on them. The Jaunty Waters and the governors of prisons in Florida have called that machine Old Sparky in their charming way for good reasons for a long time. It was long, it was wrong, but it felt so right. Comes in there, sorry, example. To show who's in charge. That's why they do it, Old Sparky. In Arkansas, what is that? Arkansas. Yeah. They executed 3 guys, 1 girl. One guy had to lie on a gurney with a drip in his arm for about an hour and a half, while somebody called Clarence Thomas debated whether he should indeed live or die. The statement made by the prison governors afterwards was, well, it's cheaper to do it in batches, it saves the states and money. It saves the states money, my grammatical error there, and it also saves on stress among the staff. Money, money, money. That is what it means to have a therapeutic society. That is what it means if you give someone like Clarence Thomas the power of life and death. We on this side of this house do not grant him that right, and I could stop here, but I won't. There was another point of interest in Florida. The victim's family said they thought that Pedro Medina Pedro Medina was innocent, which is good reason to think that he was. That will be settled another day, but it's too late for poor Pedro now. His Holiness the Pope was intervening, asking for a clemency. I would consider that a problem for the National Review rather than any man or, us in particular, but we are aware and we can make note. It isn't my business, but it was a point of interest. As the district attorney at the time for the correct, administration said, in an approval rating or an approval seeking statement for ratings, well, that will teach anybody that wants to kill anybody in Florida not to do it here, because there appears to be something wrong with our execution apparatus. I know that's not a Florida accent, but it's it's an approval rating seeking statement that should never be said, and rather blasé when you get to hear the bits in the background. He said, in a considered statement by a district attorney in a State of the Union, clearly seeking popularity and possibly getting it for all we know or care. As you probably don't know, there are some politicians who are not good enough to resist the temptation of the opinion poll attitude to a human sacrifice, or indeed the photo op campaign to a human sacrifice. We've seen some horrific linking into this to expand onto jihadi cutting off heads, factions, warriors, how they go and commit, what they do. I've said warriors, I didn't say anything, I'm being careful, but we need to, this has got this is sometimes moving on, and this was 94, did I say? It's got some expansion in. And the man that said this has got some proof of claims of this. I hope this news does not distress you. One of the presidents of the United States, in fact, launched his campaign for that high office by allegedly executing a mentally retarded black man named Ricky Ray Rector in Arkansas. So darker skinned, but the words are retarded black on the report, so I'm going to say them as they are, with love and respect to all the darker skinned family. The man's name was Ricky Ray Rector. A man so deeply lobotomized that he used to save his dessert after every dinner. He had a fondness of a pecan pie. When they came to his cell one night to take him away, because Bill was having a hard time allegedly in New Hampshire, and it had been said by Christopher Hitchens, this part, okay, and he allegedly had, RIP, he's no longer with us, but he allegedly at that time had the proof of these claims. I do not. I'm repeating what I've heard and seen in reports. For no other reason did they comfort Ricky that night than what has been said there. Mr. Rector, as he left his cell, he left his pecan pie behind. He said he'd save it for later. He didn't know why they'd come to get him. Mr. Rector even helped them find a place in his arm for the catheter, as he thought they were doctors who were trying to cure his condition. We'll have a moment there, alright? Just so you can mentalise that, and that's powerful, isn't it? That's the power right there. A small price to pay, certainly. The administration think for a presidency of such excellence. Certainly not. Not the least such price, and certainly in the scale of the cost of human sacrifice, probably not the foulest. But take that opinion poll execution that I just alluded to. It could be argued that this is actually an argument against the degradation of our public life and against postmodern politics. That it shows that the corruption and rottenness of that, and not specifically of the human sacrifice system, sometimes called capital punishment. Well, Capitol Hill, capital letters are just how happens to be capital. I'm not going to get into that at this stage. Well, I could take that point on board, I believe. One thing we are overly critical of, because I support Christopher of the Hitchens fan views here, is virtual politics. And that is true, that some of the arguments on our side are very good and sound and honest and very decent, and are made by people who are deserved of all those adjectives, of whom the Reverend Jackson, whose book is a salient example. But let us agree that there are weaknesses that we might want to be the first to admit. It has been said that this is a racist penalty. Obviously it's America we're looking at here. We've got the institutionalised racist reports of the rank and file metropolitan officers, and we got Lammy's report there, David of the Lammy, who I said Wolfie. All right, you may have heard it said it's racist, and the evidence of this racist penalty is overwhelming. This is coming from stateside Christopher Hitchens, and in the past, not relevant modern day. I can't say that, you'd need to refer to. All the figures confirm that the death penalty, capital punishment, is applied in the most abruptly differential way as between black and white people of Americas, and that it is indeed in large parts of the country a legacy of the time. When sharp reminders were needed as to who was running the show, it could equally well be argued that is an objection to racism, not to capital punishment. It could be argued what we need, therefore, is not a punishment that is inflicted in a racist way. After all, it could be even said that this is a racist society, or a society in recovery from racism. Other penalties too are applied differentially very well. It could be argued, let's have a non-racist application of the human sacrifice principle. Let me just say that equal opportunity human sacrifice would not meet any of the objections we have to human sacrifice on this side of the house. Another argument is very, very popular at that moment. It gets you into the New York Times letters page infallibly, that was noticed after Florida again, is to say that if we are killers, that makes the state killers. How tainting this would be, as if there is no moral difference between the government and a murderer. Well, excuse me, okay, that was at the time claimed a US government and a state that has just admitted to running a training school for torturers, murderers and death squad conveners all across Central and South America for 25 glorious years. It is a state that runs a thermonuclear economy. It is a state that is the largest exporter of weaponry, and therefore the machinery of death globally in the history of any state in the world. I'm a bit concerned about the United Kingdom's foreign war policy, arms trade, Saudis and etc. there, but to be expanded upon. That's quite a lot and a long history of violence right there. So the objection, therefore, is thus: the state is already too much like a murderer. It's not going to get very much more so by conducting human sacrifice, but we denied that right anyway. It's been said it's capricious. That's true. And there is one course, absolutely morally unanswerable cases to be made against it, of a pragmatic kind, which is that an innocent person executed is an unbearable thing to think about. That the that the irrevocability of it means that justice can never be done. Whereas all forms of punishment, even if they've been applied by a racist system that never sentences the rich, none the rest can be corrected. And of course, less often notice that if you have executed the innocent, you have by definition liberated the guilty. I mean, it looks like it's a double offence, in other words, against all possible norms. Again, by definition, ex hypothesi, in the case of the murder of the innocent in a human sacrifice, the culprit has obviously now gone free. We do not think there will ever be a convincing argument against that, but it's too limited. No, our argument is, or I should say, our argument is this. We think of it as an infrangible argument, irrefutable one. We deny to the state the right to assume the power of life and death over the man and indeed citizens, persons. In 1981, when Monsieur Badington was the newly appointed Minister of Justice in France and moved for the abolition of the guillotine in the French National Assembly, the only one good thing that the administration apparently ever did, and had a long, very wonderful debate about, which you can all look up and research, he argued for it like this, with none of the arguments previously just said. He said, we are opposed to the institution of capital punishment. He called it capital punishment, that being human sacrifice, because it expresses a fundamentally totalitarian relationship between the citizen and the state. So this is in when? Totalitarian was used in what year, did I say? Oh no, momento, sorry. 1981. The word totalitarian being used by the French. Alright then, that's just interesting to know. It expresses a fundamentally totalitarian relationship between the citizen and the state. The whole campaign of the Enlightenment, the entire progress and conduct of the European bourgeois revolution, if you will, and of the American Revolution in its Painite form was exactly that. To say to the absolutists, no, the king has no divine right. The church does not even have a divine right. The state is a compromise between the government of men and the administration of things. It's an evil compromise. We accept it because things must be administered and to some extent men must be governed. We do hope to replace that government of men by the administration of things, 21st of the 12th, 2020. In the meantime, the state cannot any longer assume the right of life and death, the power of the higher, the middle and the low. We repudiate it. There is a struggle in which every generation has to take its place and make up its mind. With what you know and what we've pointed out, there's a lot of sacrifice happening every day. It's not so much in the guillotine and hanging by the, gallows. There's a different kind of slaughter going off, as we've eloquently pointed out here. Now the state may order you to risk your life. It may order you to fight. What is it called when you get enlisted and you've got the conscription, yeah? It may even order you to kill man, but it may not order men to die. And we are fascinated by states that will order death. The kamikaze is or was the counterpart of the worship of the emperor that we realised the moral and historical sewer of ancestor worship and hierarchy from which this disgusting apparatus seems to have derived. And in saying that man rejected and repudiate it, we also reject the beastly system of big government, opportunistically deployed, which it represents. Thank you. Easy for me to say. Taking of life in any form is not okay. Thou shalt not commit murder. Thou shalt not kill. The Ten Commandments and the interpretations there, what it actually says, may not be thou shalt not kill. It may be thou shalt not commit murder. Remember the commandments and the duty to uphold the common law obligation of not breaching the peace or the public trusts. That's not okay. And nobody says it is okay. And conceivable steps should be taken to ensure that no innocent life is ever lost, which is why we've brought to you this here. And we'd like at the end to bring it all back together and say, what? There will be people in this reading this document and in this chat room who supported, for instance, the bombing of Serbia during the Kosovo episode in the 1990s. And almost anybody reading this document will believe that our conduct of the Second World War was correct. Now in both cases, we pursued what we believe to be a good end. We can argue about that another time, okay? And we accept within the course of that, innocent people will inevitably die. Therefore, if you're going to say that you cannot accept even the faintest possibility of an innocent death as a reason for not having the death penalty, then you have to declare that you're a pacifist and that you would not have fought the Second World War, and you're going to argue the death penalty is never justified at all. That's fine. Welcome to the room. If you are going to argue the danger of innocent life being lost is the all-consuming veto over the death penalty, that's another thing. The previous UK Home Secretary said he would support the death penalty, but he was against it because of the potential loss of innocent lives. Who was that Home Secretary? It was Michael Howard. Priti Patel, on the other hand, is in favour of the death penalty. What? Exactly. Say that again. Whilst Priti Patel is commenting on the darker-skinned family crossing the borderline on the channel, seeking, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, what I'm bringing to you is darker-skinned Home Office Secretary, militant church-type mannerism with the darker-skinned relation to that. We're all related and whatever. I just think it's hilarious that we have a darker-skinned military church state secretary saying, casting away the maybe valid, may not valid immigration coming from, yes, they should have claimed asylum in France. I see the point, Pretty, but they're in the sea and next to England. And you are up for the death penalty as well. Who are you? Where is your heart? I have the proof in the archives. She was talking to Ian Hislop on I think they think it's all over. The link will be put into version 2. Whether you agree with me, the trust, this publication or not, you have to acknowledge that this is of learned text. So we're moving on to page 58 of 61. If you've been here from the beginning, give me a fist bump. Thank you. 3 hours and 9 minutes. I'm going fast as well, believe it or not. Faster than I should be, but not as fast as jibber jabber. We're going to move on to the final and last chapter. Again, little ones and ones that are delicate. I'd like you to bear that in mind and protect what needs protecting here. This is going to cover violent rape, all right, briefly, and gloss around it. An 11-year-old girl whose girlfriends had suffered violent rape and were burnt alive, to be exact, all right. They're not naturally going to remark, all right, these following statements and words without being coached and learned in some ways. They shouldn't just go to prison, jail, because it's a cruel and unusual punishment to have them executed. They, the criminals, the ones that committed the violent rape, murder and burnt them alive, those criminals shouldn't just go to prison or jail because it's a cruel and unusual punishment to have them executed. And that's coming from allegedly an 11-year-old girl regarding that. Do you remember me writing that in the earlier pages of this document? There's a reason why I put that in there and a reason why I put it at the end, because these are real references too. I'm aware that a great many of our self-governing sovereign supporters of SPLSPro.com and Indie, this channel, will never have heard of this legal expression prior. So just take a moment to think about the levels of awareness and programming that are currently underway. Why is life in prison without possibility of parole not cruel? Forget the unusual part, that's completely subjective. They're both subject through service. Then I would like to know, why isn't that cruel? These killers were about 20 when the crime happened. Cruel and unusual punishment, the argument that life is sacred. Therefore, you don't execute murderers. It's the opposite, because life is sacred. The only way to perpetuate the belief that life is sacred is to take away the life of those who deliberately take it away. Some might say, I hear what you're saying. So it's been written in. Some reference an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But really, what is that interpretation of that in its factuality? Is it an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth? Or is it like value for like value in a different way? Is that really a life for an eye, a life for a life, you know, and so forth along them lines? I'd like to argue about that a little bit or expand upon it. It's like saying freedom is sacred, therefore we won't put anybody in jail. But we put people in jail in order to show that freedom is sacred, because people who took away your freedom or our freedom should go to the jail and have their freedom taken away. Now remember this. And then I've got a lot of sovereign stuff and sovereign all at the end. Reference the purple thumbprint.com, sovereign and being human. So we're finished. Yes, I've done. Version 1.0 of the heartless strawman that got caught on Mr. Jones' plantation and received his capital punishment. 25 thumbs up. Bless you. That sacrifice, that's influenced by a great many. The sources page on there are probably going to be a full A4. It's got pictures. I'd like to take the time to show you them another time. When I say pictures, they are illustrations of and quotes and your references to the sources. Shout going out to example. I just ruined that at the beginning. If we don't kill ourselves, but I don't mind. The ego is put to one side, so I don't want to be a singer. Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be an idiote. So there's a lot in there. I am going to say hello to all that's in. We are casting tonight as well at about 9:30.com, and then maybe tonight's cast on Tube. It's officially not on. I've overburnt myself with this one, 31332. We'll come and see you Sunday for the kickback on this and the feedback, all right? So I would like to see your comments later. We got live chat on. I want to give you a shout and see who's in. And then I'm getting off. I'm going to have some food. I don't know if I've got the screen up. There could be, yeah, I've got the screen up. Look, we've done it that way. I'm going to do a shout and I'll look at the comments later. Oh, it's busy. If you could, if you're new and you haven't subbed, give us a subscribe. You are a scribe, not a subscribe. I'd like to know your comments, feedback. We are going to end soon. I'm just refreshing now to give you a shout or eat. That one, Wish and Geek, shipped. It doesn't have in the mask section, it's got a bit of black foamy, you know, just foam. There is no protection on that at all. It's for riding on a mountain bike and such things as, but as you are aware, eyes are the window to the soul, microbacterial. So I did show you a picture of that, and because I got my pirate tooth, I thought I'd show you that as well. About time. I do like the overall effect. Friend or foe, we don't know. It's not very little ones might be put off by that if you was to go somewhere and a shop wise. So I'd be careful who you're around. Have consideration, you know. And audio render error. Please restart your computer. Don't tell me there's no audio after 3 hours. Yeah, there is. Or you would have said. My goodness for that. Yeah, sorry. Let's go. I can't see. So Simon, Stuart, Jesus, Quinn, Anders, new scriber, Legalna TV. Thank you. Wow, they've been spamming or what? Blue Man's, you've been looking after it. Yes, you have. All right, nice one. They're not spam. You just got a lot to share. Thank you to all the new scribes and to that one. Gertej Rana. Nice one. Wow, you've been sharing. Thank you to the new scribes. It is working at last. Yeah. Lux, Stuart. I can't see anymore. It won't let me. So thank you all. We'll be back tomorrow evening. We'll be on the .com tonight at 9:30. And myself and Kev, if he's available, 9:30 tomorrow, Sunday. And then I've got lots more to come as well. More announcements, more notices, declarations, proclamations in light of current politics, concerns and fears, military, church, state, banker, and we are helping and doing a great many things, at least 4 different mans at the minute this week, and more or less different areas. You're going to get privy to them. So Red-Eyed Jedi, Sovereign Scholars, Self-Initiates, thank you, blessings, peace and love. This is a heavyweight document for more than one reason. I know that there will be ones that will hear something in there. There's something for everybody, and it's pulling together nicely. So that was done since Wednesday. Wednesday I was out and about. I actually mini died Wednesday in the heat. I must have lost a pint. I come home with a headache. Here's a good point of note. Pink salt, I think I showed Anne-Marie, 10 pink salt grinds. It's about 1 gram of salt in the jar, distilled water, mixed it in that heat of Wednesday, it all dissolved into the 28 degree temperature water, 20 degree water. You drink that, it's like when you're swimming and you accidentally take a bit of seawater in. It's not pleasant. It's your body wants you to spit it out. Wednesday I came back fatigued, lost a lot of water, chronic headache there. I don't get headaches ever, not at all. It's rare for me to get a headache. So I was like, did I hear that man on the phone say that he was under quarantine and I was in his house? I went and asked him, Mr. Ali, did you say you're under quarantine? He told me he was all right, but I heard him on the phone. So I thought, I got an headache. Perhaps I got a little bit of a flu virus coming on. I'm going to go home to the gills. So I thought, I'll take this salt, see what happens. Scottish salt, Celtic, or Himalayan pink are the only 2 I would use. Not glass-enriched sodium. Water, mixed it up, drank that. Horrible, absolutely rancid, not pleasant at all. Swallowed it down, half an hour later, no headache. What? So yeah, Wednesday I was just out of it, come back, collapsed. Thursday, recovery, started this, 9:30, Thursday, the 13th of August 2020, and it was finished Friday, 9:30 p.m, the 14th, and it's raw as anything, so thank you. Make a list, and review it. Let us know Sunday what you think, or on the .com. And much love. It will be released once Greg has done a cover and index, and I've added the extra bits to it, and that then will be passed around as the introduction to the second tier. You've got your merit, which is the lower bronze, the silver second is your foundation, and we've got a third, which is special, which is the last one, administrator, data controller, agent, diplomat, emissary, ambassador, creditor, grantor level. So like I say, the inspiration has been many and various. Some of that needed to be said. A for V, that's going to come under your UCC with your signatures, your transfer, your endorsement. I am looking for bits to be filled in. I will be monitoring this ever so closely, and we'll say ciao for now. 3 hours 19. Anybody said anything that I need to look at the end? Gosh, the GANs has got to be done. Yeah, I've got them behind with that. Stuart, I'm going to catch up with you. You understand why I didn't come back to you about your friend. I've read that text message. I spoke to Fly. Fly's good. I'm going to go and speak to a couple more, and we'll sort everybody out. So thank you for your patience and support. Bish, bash, bosh. Much love. See you, scribes.